And we're live. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. Madam Clerk, would you please take attendance?
Yes, we have Dave Humphreys, Tom Caldwell, Laurie Connolly, Jay Fundling, Julie Joyce is on Zoom, Christine Croseal is here, Doreen Langlois is on Zoom, Tim Lyons is here, Julia Maxwell, JJ O'Connor is on Zoom, Ronald Sia is here, and Judy Steele is on Zoom. So you have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Welcome. It's nice to see everybody and to have everybody on the Zoom as well. Tonight, our first presentation is going to be with regards to a proposed article for the establishment of a historic district commission and district. So we have Mr. Lawler from the committee. Chair. Please join us. Welcome.
And thank you for asking me here. Before we start, I want to congratulate everyone here in Milton as being named this week as one of the 10 best small towns in the United States, yet again. Congratulations to all of us.
Please tell us all about your proposed article with regards to the historic district and commission.
I'd like to start where we started 2 years ago during the pandemic. The select board named 5 of us onto this board, Local Historic District Study Committee. And what we were tasked to do is to understand what and how to protect our town as it goes forward. We're a town that has been around for hundreds of years, and our expectation is it's going to be around for another 100 years. So what can we do as a town and as this group to protect that lifestyle? Not to demand like some of the towns have done with this kind of a thing. Nantucket comes to mind, great place, been there many times. We don't want all the houses to look like, because our houses are individual and have been built at different times in our growth. All of that is part of the culture and style of being Milton. We were looking to understand what we could do and how we could do that. So the first year and a half, we spent studying federal historic districts, state historic districts, and then down to the local historic districts. Each one of these so named comes with both advantages and requirements. So federal government, and we have 6 federally designated spots. Milton Village is not one of them. So that was our first step, was to really understand what a federal historic district was, then what a state historic district was, and then to understand the 200 communities in our state, what they did and why they chose their specific areas as local historic districts. That was a task. We went through a lot of members. We started with a group of 5. We grew to, I think, 13. We diminished to 7 and ran pretty much like that for a while. We're now down to 5, which was the original group. And all the original 5 are still with our group. I don't think I answered your question. I think the question was, what is it, this proposal? So how we got to this proposal was bringing in a variety of people who had more expertise. Being volunteers for our town, we didn't know anything. And we wanted to be able to, if our name is going to be on this document in this historic town and it's going to live for 100 years, we wanted to have done the best that we could. So we elicited pretty much every stakeholder in the town and in the state that we could get to come talk to us. In the end, one of the reasons why we were directed towards Milton Village, firstly, it's not protected by the nation. It is one of the most important parts of not just Milton, but the industrial growth in our country. Was one of the first places where water power was used to generate power to run an industry. First time. We had steel mills there. Everybody knows the chocolate factory, but there was a variety of different, very, very important businesses that existed in those buildings. So that's how we came to the conclusion that Milton Village should be what we consider as our committee put forward for a vote and go through the Warrant Commission and the Planning Board and the Select Board and everybody else that we have to go through to do this. So now our step is, I had a discussion with Jay from your organization, from your committee here, just last night, and he read through our proposal, very long proposal. Before I get to what Jay said, I want to talk about why the proposal is as long as it is. These are dictated by the state. The state wants to know specific kinds of things about each building and why it's important, and each area and why it's important. So we had to document that with existing information, historical information. That takes a lot of pages. And so it is a rather long proposal. Not longer than most, but it's long. It's a big book report, is what it is. So this has already passed through the Mass Historical Society, Mass Historical Commission, about a month ago now. We have presented to the Planning Board, I believe it was last week or the week before, and got their endorsement. What we're here today to, back to Jay and my conversation as of last night and this morning, is to answer the questions, because this is going to go into the warrant, and we want to make sure that we state it correctly. Any adjustments we do to this document, we have to then pass through the state again. But right before we started here, I was speaking to Jay, and all of the things that we talked about, Jay and I talked about, he had questions about, these are questions of not substance, but process and language and things like that. So I see absolutely no issue with the state then approving this, and then this then becomes part of what will be moved forward. I think that's enough, right?
Can you clarify what you just said about working with Jay? So what is this
I didn't
new
actually
thing?
work with
Well,
Jay.
that Jay had asked some questions.
Yes.
You two had conversation back and forth. Is what we originally got different now?
No.
Okay, so what we got from Nick on 922 is still the
exact document.
And
what Jay did was read through that document and make adjustments, like an historic district rather a historic. That's just a language thing. That's not a problem. We clarified the number of committee members and things like that. But I can just go through what Jay and I spoke about. And if anybody has any questions about that, we can delve further into that.
so is it the article, Jay, that has changed, or has it been edited? Then with your edits? Can I
Well,
ask?
I'm looking at the chair because I'm not sure about the process.
I call it a proposal.
Okay.
It's not an article, it's a proposal and I'm a volunteer, what do I know?
Me too.
Yeah.
What do I know?
This is a proposal that went forward because that's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to write a proposal to go to the state.
Correct.
And that's what we did. And after after a year and 3/4, and it's there now, and it was agreed. Now it's been in front of everybody. Nick shared it with everybody. Nick Milano, for
Correct.
everybody knows.
Correct.
So
So what he shared is now different, but
In
not
slight ways.
Not substantively.
in slight ways,
Okay.
but nothing that needed any kind of a pushback. It was just something further discussion. It was, for instance, in the proposal, the next group, we're the first group. We decide that we should do this. Then at the town meeting, if it is approved by 2/3 majority vote at that meeting, then another group is set up to create the structure around the proposal. Now, the structure would be, what are the rules? What are the punishments for rules? One of the things that Jay and I talked about was a $500 fee for noncompliance. And while that is in there, it doesn't necessarily stop anybody from doing what they want to do. And the reality of a group like this is that you have the rules, but there's not a whole lot of teeth. You know, there are fines, but in many of the other counties, many of the towns, fines were never collected. It was a solution was found to the situation.
So in the original proposal, you didn't have fines?
No, we did.
You did have fines?
We did, and that was the discussion.
Okay, so you were just chatting about the fine, but Jay, can I ask Jay a question?
Yeah, I'm looking to Dave to
Right,
see
so
how this
I
should
guess
go.
the first process. So the warrant committee has received the draft
Yes.
that went to the town,
But can I just correct that? Accepted proposal.
the proposal, the accepted proposal. So we've reviewed that. You know, sometimes there's a need to clear up typographical errors, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera, fine. Was there anything, and what's substantive is sometimes a moving target. Like you had mentioned earlier that there was like numbers of people on the
Yes.
committee, things like, did
Yes.
anything of that nature get changed as part of your conversation with Jay?
It was more clarification. Jay had asked about, in my committee, there had to be someone who was nominated by the Realtor Board. And there is only one Realtor Board. It's the National Association of Realtors, it's the National Mass Association of Realtors, and then down to Greater Boston Association of Realtors. I happen to be an alternate to the directors of the G-Bar. And so the executive of the Greater Boston had suggested my name, versus there's a ton of great agents in this town. I was put forward because of not just my real estate skills, but more my community activity skills, and knowing that I would follow through for my town in this regard. So the question that was asked is, are there any other Realtor boards? There are no other Realtor boards. Second question was, we need to have an architect on here. Our board had 2 architects. One was an AIA, Architects Institute of America, I think is what that is, but it's the equivalent of a realtor and an architect. This is an architect who has rules that are set up by a national organization. And we also had a non-AIA architect. You can work with an agent who's not a realtor. That doesn't mean they're not good at what they do. It means that they haven't dedicated the time or spent the money to be part of a trade association.
So it sounds like you haven't actually changed any of the text in your proposal following your meeting with Jay. Did you change any of the text in your proposal?
I have changed absolutely nothing yet because my conversation with Jay was maybe 20 minutes, Jay, do you think?
Maybe a little longer.
No more than 30, because I kind of have that in my head, a 30-minute conversation. You either get something done or you don't. I think that's a lawyer thing. I am not a lawyer. And so, but then Jay took the time to, I like lawyers. I took the time to answer his 15 or 20 questions. And again, they're not out of bounds. There was nothing that we talked about, unless, Jay, you want to step forward and say, was there anything that you still?
I just want to minimize confusion. So,
Well, it's like we're having an open hearing. It's come up. Share with
Yeah,
us,
okay.
Jay. Share with us, Jay.
sure. I mean, I think we would all like to hear from you sort of what you would have said if you hadn't talked to me, like, why is this a great idea and what is it going to do? And you said that a bit at the beginning.
I think it's a great idea for a variety of reasons. After getting deep into this and having spent time with the Mass Historical Commission, why this is important. As a town, we have an incredible history here in this town. So many important things, important people, important places. So we went down to the point of what's historical, why is it historical, and does it add or delete to our lifestyle, our community here if you lose that. One of the things that's protected is not in our proposal, but in proposals like this are the stone fences that are around here. And those are historically protected because they've been around forever. We determined that to be named historical, you have to have some significance beyond just being old. So you can't be the oldest colonial in Milton. You have to have been something more than that. I think Suffolk Resolves is actually, that's two buildings put together, but it looks like a colonial. That is historic, not only because of the type of architecture, but because of what went on in that town, in that building. Not in its current space, but in its original space. Did I just ramble? Did I answer the question? The question was, why did we want to do this? And we wanted to do this because the town of Milton is changing. We have proposals that are going to be up with us at town council, at the town meeting in December, that can really change what Milton is about. I'm talking about the.
We know.
Yeah. So this proposal allows us, and by the way, in Milton Village, there is one of these stations. It doesn't go all the way up to Capon Street. I don't think it includes Central Avenue Station either, because the Milton Village overlay comes slightly below that, so it doesn't include that. But the line goes right through the middle of Milton Village. And so it's important that we have this in place, because we will be, and this is my opinion, because new housing has to be created, they're going to be looking for places for that kind of stuff. So one of the, two of the really interesting old buildings is our original jail that's down there It's now the Milton Yacht Club, which is kind of funny. And there's money allocated to preserve that. But at the top of the hill is the Hat Building, which has gone on forever. And it's in complete disrepair. It's in such great location. If I was a developer, I would say, why can't I put a tall building there? And this proposal would not disallow that, but it would make it so it fit in to the overall. Now, if we go to 10 stories, that doesn't fit in. I don't know what the Hendry's is. I think that's 4 stories.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's not, Hendry's, the old Hendry's, is not in this district. But that was one of the specific things that we've been thinking about. Some of the questions we've had from the public were in relation to that. What's going to be built and how's it going to ruin our lives? I said, that's the wrong question to ask. How can we protect our town and allow the town to grow? We were agrarian at one point, and then we became, the summer spot for Bostonians. And then Governor Hutchinson, began to break off the land. He was the first developer. And all those other really nice houses on Milton Hill, they're part of that. But that was done in an organized fashion. And that's what we're hoping this proposal does. Allows the town to grow in an organized fashion.
Judy has a question on Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just checking my audio. You can hear?
Yes, Judy, it's great. Thank
Perfect,
you.
thank you. So my question goes to a remark that was about fines for not compliance. And nobody's ever been fined, but solutions have been found. Describe a solution, please.
I'm not
What's
sure
a
I
solution?
understood this question.
I don't think we have a question yet. Judy, is there a question?
Yes, could you describe one of the solutions that was found in any of these instances where a fine was warranted, but a solution was found instead? Can you expound on that? What would a solution be if someone is violated and they are eligible to be fined, but a solution was found? Could you describe a solution?
Okay, thank you for the question, Judy. The solution, and this was not here in Milton, this was in other towns that we researched. The solution was determined by the individual town in the way that they did that. There were fines that were levied, but in most of the cases that we researched, the fines were never collected. The solution, whatever had to happen, happened. And so the fines were not collected.
I understand that. I understood it from the first time it was mentioned by you. But I'm asking, how did they find a solution? So, for instance, let's take one of the high street houses. And somebody wants to reinvent it. They don't like the siding. They need an extra room, things like that. And so they could possibly be in violation of the terms of retaining a historic, meet the historic guidelines. Now, and that might make it so that a fine is eligible to be levied.
Absolutely.
What do you see as a possible solution? I'm not getting a sense that we can understand an example of a solution. So using an example of a high street house and somebody violates this historic nature, what do you see as a solution that would prompt the town not to collect the fine?
Well, first we have to define what an issue would be, and then we could talk about the solution. Say, for instance, you brought up a house that wanted to put on an extra room. So let me define some of the terms on what historical is. Historical is your facade. And it's not your facade, it's your facade from the public street. So if you want to add something onto the back of your house, it never comes under that rule because it's not visible from the street. And that's how it's defined. That is what they consider the historical community. So in that case, there would be no fine. You could go ahead and do it as long as it didn't interrupt any zoning issue. Another one that came up, Judy, was painting. And a town like Nantucket demands that everything be white. And we're never going to do anything like that. We are not creating the rules. We are creating the framework in which Milton Village can become an historical local spot. And then the committee that comes in behind us is going to set the rules and set the penalties, which could include fines. And teeth can be put into that, but that's the next committee. That's not us.
A follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Sure, yes, Judy.
on the same pathway.
Yes.
Let's say a house on High Street violates the rules and doesn't put up the right facade in their renovation. And so it's eligible to be fined, as other towns have levied fines in these kinds of districts. I'm still not getting a sense how everyone reached the solution. So in this case, in our town, who would collect the fine? How do you get that fine to be negotiable? As in solutions. I keep hearing the word solution, but I don't have any examples.
Well, you live on.
And who actually negotiates these solutions?
So let me see if I can help you a little bit more. You live on
Okay.
High Street. High Street is in Milton Village, by the way, and it's one of the most significant streets in the history of Milton. It was the main thoroughfare when Hutchinson lived here back in the 1700s. Adam Street did not exist at that time. So your street, High Street, was very, very significant. Now, you don't need to tell me in this public forum what your address is, but I know all of those buildings. And I can't imagine what you would want to do to one of those buildings that would not be in compliance with what we consider to be historic, because I can't. Say, for instance, you want to change your windows, and you have single pane 6/6, which are historical old windows. They are not efficient. So a property owner would want to have a more efficient house. Now, that would be something that our next committee would determine, and there wouldn't be a fine for something like that. You can't be fined, or you shouldn't be fined, for bettering the property, because that is bettering the town. And so so Judy, let me say it this way. The solution is the next committee make sure good people are on it, and not people who want to say, not in my town, not in my neighborhood, because...
Excuse me, pardon me, I interrupted, I'm sorry.
I didn't understand what you said.
So it kind of like, if I may, like, so this proposal here does two things. One is it's going to set up the commission. Two, it's going to establish the district. So a lot of the specifics with regards to the process, that's downstream.
Yes.
So what this, like with regards to Judy, with coming up with the solution, there's language here that says that the commission shall institute any appropriate action or proceeding in the name of the town to prevent, correct, restrain, or abate violation of this bylaw. So this proposal seems to be giving wide powers downstream to the commission to be able to put whatever process in place they deem necessary at that time. They have, you know, the fines, et cetera. So I think with regards, so Judy, it's a great question. What's the interplay? What are the roles of the commission? How can we work with people? We prepare to work with people before we just go seek to enjoin them, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of that's downstream. So I just want to point that out. That I'm looking at the section of the proposal. It's 11, enforcement and penalties. 11.2, these issues are addressed, not in tremendous specificity at this time, but this is a second major step
Right.
in a multi-step process that's been underway for 3 years?
2
2.
years.
Thank you. Okay, I jumped in. Judy, based upon that or any other questions that you have, Judy, do you have any more questions or any more comment?
I apologize to be stuck on this. It was mentioned everything has been resolved through solutions, but it seems odd that there wasn't research and able to say, for instance, in one case, this was a resolution. So it makes me wonder how much research was done into that. And so I'm going to leave it there, though, Mr. Chair.
Well, Judy, I think I'm going to push back a bit. There was no resolution. It was always a proposal. And there was zero resolution. It was a proposal. And this part of the proposal could have established anywhere in the town as the local historic district to protect. But we followed the planning board, who is spending a lot of time making sure that the Milton Village is protected in the way it needs to be over the next 5 years. And we lined up with them.
Okay, thank you very much.
But I think my sense of her question is that she's seeking like a historical example, maybe from another jurisdiction, where maybe a fine had been levied, say Newton or wherever. And that
Newton is not one of the towns that has this.
Okay,
But,
or
Hingham.
where maybe a fine had been levied and the town had worked with the property owner to rectify the situation. I think that might be where she's going. Can you give us an example of how maybe somewhere else that had played itself out?
So say, for instance, there is an issue with a building, with a home. And the homeowner wants to do something that may not be in compliance with this. They want to tear the whole house down. Now, that is something that wouldn't be allowed because it's already designated as historical. So they can't tear it down. They have to keep the facade and rebuild from the inside. I don't have a specific example of anything that happened in Hingham, but in the 2 years of research that we did, Judy, we never tracked down what the town did to collect. We knew that some fines were levied, but fines were never paid. And that's the individual town's choice. And our town, this next committee will dictate what that is. And for instance, if they say it's not going to be a fine, a monetary fine, but you can't do anything for 2 years, a levy of some sort like that. I don't know what the next group is going to do.
I'm going to ask Jareem. He's got his hand up on Zoom. Then we'll go to you, Ron. Jareem, you had your hand up?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I guess, a couple of questions. So I guess, in the vein of what Judy was saying and everybody else, I mean, I think more or less, we all want to know maybe if there's a mediation process that you guys are aware of or, have seen or even intend to implement when, this new committee takes over, committee, I don't know. I'm just coming in. I apologize, guys, because I've been out for a while, doing personal stuff. But I just wanted to know if you had an idea, if you could even what you could imagine this process might be that Judy is referring to, and I'm talking about sort of a mediation process like you would do in court or anywhere else. If, for say, example, a homeowner, wanted to, put an addition to his property or what have you in the instance that they are in this historic area and maybe they didn't know that it was historic, maybe they didn't know the rules. Is there a mediation process that you've seen implemented or plan to have implemented should there be some conflict?
That's a good question, sir, and yes, there is. There is a mediation process. And to your point that they wouldn't know, it's an historic, they wouldn't have to know if they want to change their, say they want to swap out their windows and their front door. Well, windows, we talked about this and we're not going to make that because that makes the house more efficient. So we didn't want to stop them from doing that. But if they had a door that's significant, then there has to be a process by which, if there's going to be a change, why that's going to be changed and how that's going to happen. And that is, in fact, mediation. Much in the way you go for a zoning change.
So respectively, that means that there would be, and I think this is what Judy was trying. Is there going to be an individual who,
No. A board.
Okay.
It's going to be a board, like the zoning board. Think of it like that.
Absolutely. And what value do you think that this particular area is going to bring to the town? Meaning, what additional value do you think that creating this historic area is going to bring to the town financially or otherwise?
Well, I think the real benefit is keeping the town having the same sense of itself. Like if you drove by and say some big pocket like Toll Brothers. Toll Brothers comes in and they're going to take all of the Baker Chocolate Factory and the Mays building at the top of the Wills building. It's had a number of different names. We're right on the corner of Adams and what's the other one?
Elliott.
Adams, I'm sorry?
Elliot?
And Elliott. They're not going to be able to do that. That's just absolutely not going to be possible to do because all of those buildings are being protected by the local district. So some big pocket developer is not going to be able to come in and do that. We don't want them to do that anyway. We do need to have development, and that's been kind of, how we do that is another issue. How this fits into all of that is we are establishing this particular area as protected locally. So the local group has different powers than a state or the federal.
Okay.
It's odd to have to look here to see them.
Understood. So really the value is just kind of, keeping the historical aspect of the town, the visuals of it, obviously, and or sort of growing the town around this sort of historical area so that, you keep the uniqueness of this particular area
Yeah.
and it keeps its value as that. Is
Yeah.
that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ron?
I had one question, or two questions. On paragraph 7 of the proposal, I think that's where the proposal talks about the process for reviewing
The
applications.
process for what?
It's like a process where a homeowner
Yes.
could engage the commission to get
Yes.
an approval for their plans.
Yes.
I think that makes sense. I think maybe the situation could be, what if a homeowner fails to engage the commission and they make the change, what do you
Yeah.
do after the fact? I wonder if it would be helpful to add some guidelines for how should that be addressed by the commission?
Anytime any house is going to be altered, you have to have a permit. To get a permit, you have to present a proposal to the town. That's where it's going to be caught, before something happens, not somebody just doing something and then that doesn't happen in this town. That would get stopped. It really doesn't. I mean, people may try and do it. A big tree was chopped down, just to bring up, just to bring up a horrible
Bring
situation.
up old wounds.
Yeah. And that was adjudicated in the way it should. It should never have happened. It did happen. But most of these things will not happen. And we didn't work for the 2 years on the finest, minute what if.
Sure.
We worked on the bigger picture. How can we maintain and how can we allow our town to grow over the next 100 years?
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. I'm just wondering if it would be helpful if there is some guidelines about the possibility of someone altering their home without a permit by mistake, let's say, or a tree falls down and they start repairing it without realizing they need to get a permit.
Right.
It damages their home.
Again,
So-
permits have to be gotten. But if permits were not gotten, that happens. Somebody says we don't need no stinking permits, and build something. That would be an issue. That the building department would see that first, and then it would come to this group if it was in this district. But I just don't think that's going to happen unless something egregious happens.
Okay. And then I think the other comment I had was, I think there was a question about the collection of fines and penalties.
Yeah.
And I believe the proposal in 11.4 says that the commission may designate the building commissioner to make that determination
Yeah.
of collecting any fines. So
Yeah.
it sounds like there is a mechanism that the commission would
Yeah.
that designate that power
Exactly.
to the building commissioner. So
Exactly. Yes. And again, I did talk about the lack of teeth. There's no lack of bark, but putting the town's hands into this person's pocket, that might be a little bit more difficult. But again, that's not our our committee is not set up to do that. It's the next committee to do that. And where most of this came from in this proposal was looking over the many, many proposals that the state has already agreed to, and there was a certain amount of boilerplate. So we have an attorney on our group, and the attorney read the bylaws and picked and chose what's in our bylaw.
Kristen?
Just to kind of comment on a few of the things, I have a friend who lives in a historic district, and she was pretty well aware of what kind of door she needed. I think it's a kind of, I'd guess, like realtors are gonna tell people, this is a historic district, this home does come with some, just talking to your neighbors, about, we want to do this. So I think it could, kind of to your point, I think it would be hard, if any builder comes into your house, you have to pull they're not gonna wanna do work unless you're really hiding it from the town without pulling a permit themselves, so.
And certainly in an area like Milton Village, I mean, you can't really hide in that area, because it is what it is. It's, right at the beginning of the town. in that area.
What would you say the downsides of establishing a local historic district commission or historic district would be? Like, why would other towns not do it?
That's an interesting question. Personal answer, it's a heck of a lot of work. And we're volunteers, so we've been spending 2 hours in these meetings and these conversations reading these proposals. That's one downside, like some people won't do it. Some towns can't get by, and we had a very, very difficult time with this, can't get by, well, one up my area. Why that area? And then that gets into a battle. And we had that in our group.
Meaning, sorry to interrupt, meaning it's generally seen as an upside to be chosen.
It's an upside to be chosen. And more importantly, from a real estate point of view, if you are in an historical area, your values are generally higher than non-historical areas. So it's a benefit. Now, let's say that you're in Milton Village and you don't want to be part of this. The area is an historic area, but you can opt out of being part of that. That's part of the law. So you don't have to be under those guidelines. You can choose not to be. We have a letter that I sent to Nick Milano from our group last week. We voted on a letter that's going to go out to every property owner. And each of them is being told everything that's going to happen with this. And we gave them a survey that they have to return before our first public meeting. And that public meeting, I believe, is going to be November 6th. And it's going to be held at the library. I don't know which of the which of the rooms it's going to be in, but the property owners will have gotten it. It will have been on our website. I believe it's on our website right now. And then we're going to gather all of that information. And from that, along with Jay's corrections and adjustments, then we redo it and send that back to the state. The state will then approve it, and then it comes back, and that's what gets voted on at the town meeting in December. This is a very, very tight time frame.
We have questions by Jareem, then Tim, then Tom. Jareem?
Yes, sir. Thank you again. 2 questions. So you made a reference to 5 years. I wasn't clear what you meant by that, how 5 years plays into this plan.
I don't understand that question. 5 years?
Yeah, you made a reference to something about 5 years earlier in your statement. I don't know if it meant, I don't know what it meant. You made a reference to it. I sort of interpreted it as like there would be like a 5-year, I don't know, reset or revisit of what it is we're doing here or the logistics. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dream. I don't remember that at all because I can't. There isn't any 5-year period of time.
Okay. All right. I can accept that.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing is, do you have let's say, do you have any examples or statements that were made from individuals who are involved with this, this type of activity, and their experiences over the span of 5 years, 10 years, or what have you? Do you have any thoughts about what you've sort of heard or discussed with other towns or individuals, again, who took position on these type of situations?
I never went to any other towns to sit in on their historic commissions to understand that. But when our proposal was in front of the state month and a half ago, It was our proposal, but before our proposal, the next step with the towns was going on. And we will do that with them again. So the next step is you have a proposal and it gets accepted by the town. And then it goes to the state and the state looks at it as well. And it comes back and said, this is all good. You can go ahead and you have our approval to do this. In that meeting, I watched Framingham's proposal, like what we'll do in January of next year, what they had to do. And it was just a longer, more involved presentation than what I've done here. And it included the fines and how the fines were adjudicated and what happened with them. But it was just guidelines. It wasn't any specific examples of they did this and we did that to them. No one's ever thrown in jail. The worst that happens is you get your contractor has to stop work and you have to work it through.
Tim?
On a property owner being able to opt out of the district, does that convey if they sell the property?
I'm sorry, my hearing's so bad.
If a property owner opts out of being in the district, does that convey if they sell the property to the next owner? Do they have that option or is it done?
Yes. Yeah, it's the individual property owner has the right to opt in or opt out.
Indefinitely? It doesn't change?
Indefinitely.
So, thank you.
So it's really not in anybody's interest to opt out because you don't gain anything by opting out. You lose, in fact, a little bit because your house would then not be considered part of that. It's part of the historical area, but your house isn't part of that historical area. Your house is not considered that way, unless it is actually historical. Like High Street, a lot of those properties are considered historical.
All right, it's Tom and then Julie.
Okay, Mr. Waller, I just initially want to thank you and your committee for all your work. I think it's undeniable, the historical value of Milton Village to our state and our country, frankly.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much for all this. And I don't know if this is necessarily a question for you, Mr. Waller, it might be to the chair and maybe to the board in general. But Jay and I had a conversation at the beginning of the meeting and kind of stirred up some memories just regarding zoning and fines. And can this committee set a fine?
Yes.
Okay, so it cannot be
not my committee.
not your
the
committee.
Next one.
And that's
Yes.
that's typical, and it's not a town meeting
Yes.
or
Yes.
anything like that. Okay.
And that will come in front of you as well.
Okay, absolutely. And in your review, maybe the individual in your committee who reviewed various bylaws from other towns, I see that initially you have the select board making all the appointments. Was that something was there any thought behind that? Because, and let me just add, I was thinking that, given what I'm reading in this article, that maybe appointments from alternative boards would be appropriate, like the planning board or maybe the conservation commission, just to give it like a diverse, approach to, I think, a very important thing that the town. But can you opine on that, or is there any logic behind that? Or I'm just kind of throwing it out there.
Yeah, we talked about all of that, and with our group, there was supposed to be in our group, there was supposed to be someone who actually lived in the area that we decided. Mm-hmm. None of us lived there. I live in Cliff Columbine. Another member lives in another area. We had one from Scotts Woods. We had some from the East Milton. I don't think that's near as important as the people that you have. You absolutely need somebody that understands real estate. That's a realtor. You absolutely need to have somebody who understands architecture. That's important. You actually should have somebody from a liaison from, we had somebody from the Historical Commission, but it makes sense to bring somebody in from the planning and put them on that board too, or that committee.
That was all I had.
Yeah. But I appreciate your comment, and we had early discussions. I said this at the beginning, what is historical? Why is it historical? And what does that mean? And what does that mean today? But for instance, I can give you an example of this. The railroad district.
Yeah.
The railroad district was very, very significant in getting the granite to Milton Village so it could get on the barges and go and build Boston and, Maine and all these other places. Now that doesn't exist at all, except a little plaque or something like that. So that is less significant, but it's a significant part of the history, but we didn't need those tracks because they serve no purpose, ongoing purpose.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Julie.
So just back to the ability for people to opt out of this. So anyone who is a property owner within the district could opt out, and anyone they sell their property to could opt out.
Would get the same opportunity.
Same opportunity. So if someone wants to completely change the facade of their house, they can just opt out and do that.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. I would think, I'm not sure if I should speak on, I would think that they could not. I would think it would go to the building department, and the building department would, they all know every house in the area. And if they are proposing something that is in opposition of what the area has designated, then they could not do that.
So there's not the ability.
Even if they had opted out.
So there isn't really the ability for owners to truly opt out.
You're asking a very far question. I want to level it, and I'm in the historic district, but I opted out. Probably not going to be able to do that.
So there will be caveats around opting
Right.
out and what that
Right.
actually means.
Right. And because it's governance, it's going to be ongoing. So what happens today and the people that you talk to today would be different than 50 years from now. We won't be sitting here. Maybe our kids will.
Yeah, I guess it would be helpful to understand what opting out currently would do. Because if that's November 6th, you said that meeting,
Right.
and all of the homeowners and that property owners will have gotten the information by then. So what does that mean if they choose to opt out right now? What does that actually mean for them?
Well, there's no district yet, so they're not opting out of when there's a district. So let's do after December. So in December, it gets voted in. So let's talk about somebody buys something in January, and they're in an area and they don't like this old, beautiful old building. They want something modern. They're going to have to go to the building department with a plan. And at that point, they would have to have discussions with the board, with the committee. And I don't know what that committee is going to do because that committee doesn't exist yet.
Okay, so it's fair to say we don't know what opting out actually means at this point.
No, not in a practical way like you're presenting.
What does it mean in a theoretical way then?
In a theoretical way, then you do not have the advantages that being in an historical area and being an historical site brings to you from a real estate point of view and from
Right, okay. And it doesn't in turn mean you're not subject to the rules and regulations of being in.
No,
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
But maybe the next committee makes that a little bit different. But my understanding is no. And I expect some people on my committee will go on and be on this other committee if they're appointed by the select board.
We have a question from Judy. Judy.
Judy from Milton.
Judy, you're on mute.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Sorry about that one. My question was similar to the previous Warrant Committee member that just brought up about opting out. So, and I see it this way. I own a house in this proposed historic district, and I really don't want to be in it, but it's not my, it's not my call. It's voted in and it's a historic district. So if right from the start, I decide I would have never bought a house in a historic district, and I don't feel as though I should move just because someone wants to make it a historic district. So I'm going to opt out. I'm going to do it right away, the very day it's made. Is that what you're saying people can do? And once they do that, on the very first day available to them, don't you feel as though they should be excluded if that is an option and it's one they want to?
Well, it sounded to me like your point is really somebody doesn't want to be part of it. And they decide that before they actually even understand it on the first day.
Doesn't matter whether they do or don't understand it. It matters that they have the option to do that.
Yes.
Can they do that? And your favorite phrase here tonight is having teeth. Will it have teeth for them to have sole discretion over their own property within the general zoning of the town?
Yes.
Okay.
But that doesn't exclude them from the zoning in the town or the building department rules.
Right. The thing, even those of us not in a historic district, we want to make changes. We have to go to the planning board, zoning board, get permits, 1,000 things before we can do that. But if someone makes your house that you've owned for a while a historic district and you go, whoa, not for me, you can do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right on day one. And no one can say, oh, they're trying to get around the rules.
Yes. Yes.
And they don't have to worry about that wonderful door that everyone else likes on the front of their house, but they really don't want it anymore.
Well, that's a different
They
question.
can do
That's a different
it,
question.
and it meets all the building codes and all the zoning codes, except for historic district, because they opted out. They can put in the door of their choice. Is that correct?
That is a what if situation, and we're not in that situation with this particular committee, but the answer would be the first level of defense here in Milton for what people build is our building department. So you need to have a permit. So
I do understand all of that. I'm talking specifically and only.
Well, Judy, if you allow me to finish, you will understand that all of these committees and all of these town structures are connected. So you're trying to get me to disconnect them and say specifically what we can do when we come behind the building department and the planning commission and all of that. We are a local historic district, and that means it has some of the protections, and you can opt in or opt out of that. But what that means to you specifically as it goes forward has yet to be determined. That's the next committee.
Anything else, Judy? Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you for your presentation. We'll move on
Thank
to
you for
discussion.
allowing
Thank you.
time.
Thank you for all of the work
Yeah,
that
thank
you
you
and
so
your
much.
committee did. A lot of work.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what do we think? Jay?
Yeah, I'd want to, sorry for nearly derailing the conversation before it started. Yeah, so as was mentioned, I had a conversation with our guest yesterday, and I was just looking through the bylaws, or sorry, the proposal. And I just had a lot of questions about sort of just specific wording and making it similar to other Milton bylaws and other Milton committees. And I'll tell you all you want to know about my questions that I had, but I also reached out, to our chair and sent a note to the town clerk and the town administrator. And Mr. Milano said that this has been sent to town council for review, but they haven't gotten the review back. And so when I look at it, and I don't want this to be a slight on any of our town volunteers, when I look at it, I had enough questions and it hasn't been finally reviewed by town council. I think there's enough open questions that we may need them wrapped up before we go to approve. For example, just to start out, when I see a proposal, an agenda item, a warrant item, what's the word
Article?
Article. When I see an article with a bylaw, I expect it to say, we want to insert this bylaw, chapter this, section that, line that, and it doesn't start that way. Not that that's the end of the world. None of this is the end of the world, but just I want to make it as clear as it could be for Milton bylaws. I'm happy to do a sort of quick overview of the issues I saw. Should I share my screen or just speak to them? Or I think I sent you a redlined version, or maybe Dave did. I did not send you a redlined version, but maybe Dave
I
did.
can promote your panel so you can
Okay.
share.
That's the red line I got.
Yeah, you got it too.
What are the red lines?
Look, you're the secretary.
Where are the red lines that you did though?
Oh, keep going. Okay, well, I don't know.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I haven't received the red line version of this. I've received a copy of it with no red lines.
You have to download it depending upon what you're.
Okay.
Well, no, I sent Tom and Dave both something. I just don't know why the red lines aren't showing up.
But you have to, I think if it's an attachment, you have to download it so the red line will pop up.
Well, either way, should I share?
Yes, please do
screen?
it. Do it.
Okay. So, and I'll try to go quick because it's a lot of little things. First of all, where should it be in the bylaws? I'll go down a bit. Oh, and I may be vilified for this, and nobody may agree with me. I like the word ahistoric instead of anhistoric, but everybody may disagree, and that's the smallest of the things that I brought up. Okay, let's go. Small thing. It said 7 members, and 2 with a 1-year term, 2 with a 2-year term, and we then got to have 3 with a 3-year term, just to make it add up. Then I was a little uncomfortable, and I could be convinced out of this, but saying we need someone who's a member of the American Institute of Architects. We need someone who's a member of the Board of Realtors. I don't know anything about those organizations. Maybe I could be convinced, but I don't know if those are the proper organizations to say we need a member of those. So I'm suggesting say we need a licensed architect, we need a licensed realtor. But you can already see I'm getting outside of my expertise. I'd much rather Mr. Milano, Ms. Galvin, town council, somebody make these changes. It originally said, so you've got historical society, architect, and realtor. And then it said 1 property owner from within each district area, which I don't know what that means, and then 1 at-large resident. So with the math, that implies there are 3 district areas. And I was just confused. So I just said maybe 1 property owner from the district, and then everybody else, however the select board wants to do it. And then I wanted to give the select board an out. Like, what if they can't get a willing architect? What if they can't get a willing realtor? Just give them an out. try to meet these rules. If you can't, you can't. Again, all of these are negotiable. Then there were 4 alternate members, which I didn't know of any boards or committees in town that have alternate members. So I was going to strike this. Mr. Milano said the Zoning Board of Appeals has alternate members because like they got to meet and they got to meet quickly to resolve these things. So maybe it's perfectly fine to have alternate members, but I struck it just because I wasn't used to those. Chairman, maybe we should say chair. 4 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum. At best, I think it's redundant, and at worst, town meeting within the past 5 years or so passed a rule that said if you're missing members, then a majority is a quorum. And I think they were specifically talking about the warrant committee. Like, what if 6 members of the warrant committee quit? We only have 9 members. We don't want to have 8 members for a quorum. They specifically said that. So I thought at worst, this contradicts that rule, and at best, it's redundant. More minor stuff about when they're meeting. Oh, and then, of course, I had to get into the math. There was math about you have to have a meeting within 14 business days, and then you have to publicize your next meeting by a certain number of days, and then you have to decide by a certain number of days. And I did some math. I was like, ooh, that's pretty tight. So I gave him a few more days. And, moved up the first meeting, moved back the last meeting. When it previously said you need a majority of the members to issue a certificate, which I thought if you have 7 members, and if a quorum is 4, and 4 members show up to the meeting that night, and you need a majority of the members to issue a certificate, does that mean it has to be unanimous? So I would just rather strike it. I think most people know you need a majority to pass something, so I wanted to strike that. Oh, I highlighted intent and purposes. This is going to be a question for town council. What are the intent and purposes of this bylaw? If we say they have to follow the intent and purposes of the bylaw, I don't know, is that legally specific enough or not? It made me a little nervous. And this gets to something Tom and I were talking about before the meeting. This says if you violate it, you pay $500 for each offense, and every day is a different offense. So your fine is $500 a day. Now, sometime within the past 10 years, because Tom and I were on town meeting, something came to town meeting that was, I think Tom said it was an issue of fences, and it said a similar sort of thing, $500 a day for each fine. And people in town meeting said, wait, so what if things linger for like a year? You're going to fine people tens of thousands of dollars? And the response was, well, we won't actually issue a fine that big. And town meeting revolted in a way that I've rarely seen. And they said, no, we don't want these unlimited fines, nor do we want to write a law that says there will be unlimited fines just because you double promised there won't be them. And it got rejected, and it came back 6 months later that had a maximum. So in the spirit of that, I didn't do the research as to where that ended up and what the maximum was. But in that spirit of that, I thought there should be a maximum. And that's all I've got. And when I started doing this, I thought, oh, I'll come to warrant committee and I'll suggest, let me stop sharing my screen. I'll suggest, let's make a couple changes. I currently feel like changes are a lot, and I'm not an expert in these things, and town council hasn't looked at it yet. So you've seen my thoughts. I would humbly suggest, I don't think I'm ready to vote on this tonight.
Lori.
I agree, we shouldn't vote, but I would also ask if you would share with the whole committee so we can look at your comments.
Yes, I didn't want to violate open meeting laws, but since I've shown it in public, yes, I will do that.
Kristen.
I agree, Lori and Jay. Yep.
Julie.
Ask a process question, so if we don't vote tonight, then what?
Well,
What was that?
Well, if we don't vote, that means we just don't vote. We can reschedule for another meeting if we feel that we need to conduct more hearings. We can do that. there's an issue with regards to, that was sort of the first line of questioning that I had with regards to what, if anything, had actually been changed. Because we have a proposal that's been, the warrant was opened. This article was submitted, reviewed, has been put forward, comes to us in this form. If we were to get in and make changes, I think is a possibility that we could require potentially of the, if we were to ask to reopen the warrant to make changes, or, that would be the best way to proceed, because we could vote a recommendation of no, because we want the following changes to be made in a lengthy comment that I'm not sure would serve the town well, right? So I think that if we have concerns about some of this language and that we would want it to be tightened up, then we would proceed to do that. So the first thing is we don't vote, because that raises this specter of a no vote. And is that the message that we really want to send? We want to send a message that we are against a historic district, or are we saying that we are not comfortable with the drafted language in its current form? Lori?
I'm saying that I'm in total support of the historic district.
Right.
But I think that if we've got legal counsel reviewing it still, and there's a number of changes that has been discussed and contemplated, we should look at it. And then.
I just to address something you said, I do think that if we receive a article, and if we want to make one or two changes, I think we can in our recommendation. Now, I think what you just saw goes beyond what I'm comfortable making.
Agree.
But in general, I think we can we can make a recommendation that is different than what was.
That's true, but we're talking about, this is a bylaw. And so we are talking about getting into the weeds of a bylaw, subject matter of which is, as far as I know, outside of everyone's professional career. So we should tread lightly, right? Take our time, do it right. Julie, we got Julie, Julia, and Lori. I know.
So similar. And if the select board and planning board have already approved it, maybe we just vote on it. As maybe that is, once town council comes back, I would still suggest waiting to vote. But maybe we just
right.
the article.
I think it's fair to say my general sense of the committee is that we are in favor of the historical district. We are in favor of the commission. We are in favor of the general powers that have been enunciated therein, right? Mm-hmm. So generally, the scheme seems to have the support of the Warrant Committee. However, there's some drafting language that's beyond Scrivener's. It's giving us pause.
And if Jay were to circulate his changes in the group were to be generally supportive, is that something that could be sent to town council in parallel with their review in case there's anything they would want to?
Right, I think so. I would coordinate. In order to communicate our intent and to try to do this as quickly as we can, because we have the deadlines. Lori.
And would it have to go back to the select board and the planning board?
So I think that, I'm not sure that this needs planning board's approval. Select board probably. I think if we're asking them to reopen the warrant, I'm not sure, like, procedurally exactly what would need to happen to avoid, which we don't want to do, like a no or a back for further, right? I think it's our intent that it sounds like what we would want is something that can go to the town with a warrant committee recommendation of yes. So we want to move in that direction. There's going to be some procedural hurdles, but okay.
Judy's got
Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a comment to our member Jay. Good catch on the limitations for how many days the fine can exist. I find that the most important part of your redlining is to get a good, clear definition of that. So however the chair and committee proceeds on that particular part of your redlining, I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you, Judy. Tom can attest, and maybe anyone who was at that meeting can contest. I love town meeting. That might be one of the moments that I was most proud of town meeting, was rising up and, everyone saying, no, let's limit these fines. And so when I read that, the memory came to the forefront. So thank you, Judy.
Okay.
Oh, you're welcome, Jay. And again, I submit to the committee that that's a pretty important red line for our committee to explore. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ron.
I was really also unclear about the opt-out. I think that's such a huge concept that I feel he tried to explain it, and I'm not sure he understands. And I think just leaving it to another commission down the road, I think that's a disservice, because I think there should be some guidance on what does opt-out mean for a homeowner. It could mean nothing, but people should know that. So I think that's a comment I would push to make into the comments from Jay to go back to town council.
Okay. All right. It's my sense that at this time I should suspend discussion of this agenda item. And we should move on to the next agenda item, which is the proposed article to transfer certain parcels to the Conservation Commission. So we have with us, I'd like to recognize and ask to please join the Warrant Committee, Mr. Kiernan and Mr. Doyle.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. Everyone's on mute. I don't know what happens. We can't hear the Zoom can't hear the meeting.
JJ, what was the last thing you heard?
Can't hear you.
It was about 2 minutes ago. Basically,
Okay.
Everyone was like, we should,
So it was like
we're
2
in
hours
support of
ago.
this, but it's
The
not.
last thing we heard
I
was
think John was starting to speak with a comment, and I thought it was my computer again. Thank you, JJ, for verifying that I don't have deficient equipment again.
No worries.
Thank you. You are recognized. Please tell us about your article.
Sure. Good evening. John
Yeah.
Kiernan, Chairman of the Conservation Commission. And this is an easy one for me because Arthur Doyle is the prime mover, the author, the motivation, the spirit behind this article. So he can be far more articulate and persuasive than I.
Thank you for having us. Good evening. In your papers, I don't know if the draft recommendation will appear on the screen, but in any event, I wanted to just set the table a little bit of background to help everybody out for the discussion and then the questions that you may have. The recommendation contains 5 parcels. The first 4 parcels pertain to an Article 68 that was unanimously voted by the town meeting in March of 1965, and thereafter there was an order of taking in the following October. The 5th item in that article relates to Article 67, which was also unanimously voted by town meeting. It was a taking also by eminent domain for the promotion and development of natural resources and for the preservation of open space. As background, the Massachusetts Conservation Commission Act was enacted in 1957. And related to that is Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section C, that gives detailed information about conservation within the towns that have adopted conservation commissions. And one of the statements that pertains to these 2 articles and 2 orders of land taking reads as follows. The Conservation Commission is responsible for the preservation of open land and the protection of wetlands through the provisions of the state and federal wetlands protection statutes and local bylaws and regulations. If we can go to the map, either one of the maps actually, but the second map
The second one?
that was in your packet might be clearer for everybody. Okay, we'll use this one. If you look at the upper left-hand side, there is a parcel identified as G5611. That was taken by the town of Milton for tax title purposes in 1963 and moved to the Conservation Commission, and therefore it is designated in the color green. In 1965, when Articles 67 and 68 were unanimously voted by town meeting, and that pertains to the brown area on the map in the first 4 parcels that are identified in your materials on the assessors map. They were not conveyed to the Conservation Commission as had been done with the parcel to the upper left-hand corner, even though they were taken for the promotion and development of natural resources and for the preservation of open space. The same is true down toward the bottom where you have the narrow strip of land. This is the old granite branch of the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad line. And that also was not, even though taken for the promotion and development of natural resources and for the preservation of open space, conveyed to the Conservation Commission, as had been the case with G5611 in the upper left-hand corner, even though only 2 years after that had taken place. So this is to bring things into accord and to hopefully have the recommendation of the Warrant Committee convey a positive transfer of the 5 identified parcels through the 2 previous actions of town meeting convey to conservation. Mr. Cannon, anything you would want to add?
Simply that this is consistent with our mandate, our charter to preserve and protect open space. This is a huge step forward for doing that.
Are there any questions? Jay?
Yeah, so am I to understand that the town is currently holding it and protecting it as open space?
Under, I believe, general municipal purposes.
Okay. So everyone in this room is painfully aware that once you put something in conservation, it's really hard to get it out. So I guess what I'm wondering, and I'm sort of playing devil's advocate, but I'm also thinking of the interests of the town. Let's say at some point in the future, the town wants to convert, let's say, a half an acre somewhere else in town out of conservation land to build an animal shelter or to build a teen center or something. If we want to do that later, we might, as we all know, we need to trade it for conservation land somewhere else. So at that point in the future, we might say, we want to build an animal shelter here. We'd like this half acre of conservation land. We're giving you these 25 acres right here. If we give it to you now, isn't that just harming the town and removing future options from the town?
I'm not sure it would be a trade-off of conservation land for conservation land. You would want to trade non-conservation land into conservation.
Yeah, I don't know. So you're saying this is currently conservation land?
These are not the 5 parcels that are identified in the draft recommendation are not now conservation lands.
Okay, correct.
They're owned by the town of.
So I'm saying if we don't transfer this to conservation land now, then later, maybe we could if it's in the best interest of the town as a trade. But if we give it to you now, we don't get anything in trade. Sort of, some people might want to cut my head off for suggesting this, but I'm trying to think of what's best for the town.
No, fair question, but it's a whole lot more complex because you've actually asked 3 different questions. One is who owns it? And right now, the Conservation Commission does not. It's held by the town for general municipal purposes. But it gets complicated because it's jurisdictional land. Under the Wetlands Protection Act and under the town wetlands bylaw, it's jurisdictional so that to do anything with it, you'd have to get a permit that would comply with both the state regs and the town regs.
Okay.
The third component is Article 97, which has been an issue before the town at our last town meeting involving the school swap. And Article 97, this looks to what's the function of the land as opposed to the ownership of the land.
Okay.
And currently, it would be considered Article 97 land. You can't trade 97 for 97.
Okay.
You have to trade non-97. So you've actually asked a backwards question. You're trying to give, general municipal land for conservation land, and that's not going to work.
So
However, because later on, I think we're going to address another topic in which 97 becomes very, very important, and it's significant. So there is a caveat, but I don't want to get distracted from this discussion.
So if the town said today, Conservation Commission, we'll give you these 25 acres in exchange, we want a half acre somewhere else, pick your favorite, and we're going to build an animal shelter there. You're saying that would not be allowed because, sorry, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you saying that would?
We'd have to get, in return, we'd have to have a net benefit to the Conservation Commission. Now, again, we're talking 2 different things here. One is the Conservation Commission agreeing to the swap. 2 is Article 97. That's a different formula. That involves the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And it also involves the legislature because they have to prove it. And that's the process we're going through. And I think the next topic of your discussion. So sometimes, and in particular in the next topic, EOEEA actually asked us to include in the swap 97 land for 97 land, in addition to general municipal purposes land for conservation land. And I know that's difficult to follow what I just said, because we're talking about three different things: ownership, jurisdiction, and Article 97.
So my question still is, what if the town said today, we'll give you these 25 acres, but we want another half acre from you somewhere else in town? Would that be allowed or not?
If, are you asking from the Conservation Commission's perspective? Or
From
you're
any
asking for Article
perspective,
97?
probably Article 97, that sounds more interesting.
Article 97 would have to go to the first to EOEEA and then to the legislature. Now, I assume the legislature is going to follow the recommendation of the executive office. So they would have to be convinced that there's a net gain to the town / the Conservation Commission. So that there's a net gain to the conservation purposes and the mandate, which I talked about, open space and natural resources. So if there was a net gain, it could be done, yes.
I think, I will try to help clarify what I think you're asking. I think we're all, we all have a little PTSD from the whole land swap issue at the last town meeting. So we've learned there is limited amount of land that is not already conservation land that could, at a future date, be swapped out if the situation arose, like it has with the land swap for the school. So I think Jay's question is, if this land is to be put into conservation now, that's that much less land available at a future date to potentially be swapped should the need arise. Is that an accurate?
Well, I understand that question, but the non-conservation land has to be far in excess of the conservation land that's given. So if you're asking for like an acre or a half acre of conservation land, the land swap we did 25 times more. We did 2.8 acres and we received more than 75 acres in return. So if that's what you're...
Well, this is more than 20 acres that we're talking about tonight.
Correct, but that's already protected land, which gets us into the 97 article. Because I know it's confusing and perhaps I'm not being articulate here, but 97 swap is required. So to do that, you need non-97 land to get in return.
And is this 97 land currently or not?
It is. Oh, absolutely, it is. The marshland?
That's the key.
It's Article 97 land. We're talking the marshland here. Now, there might be parts of it that are not, because if we go back to the map, there may be, I don't want to overspeak this, but the salt marsh, absolutely.
The 2 acres in purple on the map may be a possibility. But again, town meeting has designated them for the promotion and development of natural resources and for the preservation of open space.
Okay, so we've gotten a lot of answers, but at the end you said it's an Article 97 land. Why? How? Convince me. Convince me it's Article 97 land.
Salt marsh.
Okay, and therefore?
It's passive recreation. It's the function of it right now. Right now, it has a natural function. It's not being used for buildings. It couldn't be used for buildings. So it has the Article 97 park definition of its open space, its natural resource. That's 97 land.
And it's the only salt marsh owned by the town of Milton. Any of the other salt marsh on the other side of the expressway, that's owned by the Department of Conservation and Recreation, State Department of Conservation and Recreation.
I mean, that's a tremendous habitat for birds, for fish. As far as being a lot of times when they look at the type environment, it's very special.
And to that point, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act regulations say salt marshes are significant to the protection of marine fisheries, prevention of pollution, storm damage prevention, and possible groundwater supply resourcing.
I'm not my field, but it's my understanding that waterways such as this are some of the most protected lands that we have. We would never be able to build out there.
I'm not suggesting paving it. I'm just wondering if we're giving up a bargaining chip from the point of view of the town that we might want to use later.
Yeah.
And what I think I hear you saying is, no, we're not, because we wouldn't be able to bargain with it later. I'm sorry, I've taken up more
No,
time
Jay,
than
it's important. Thank you for doing
others
this.
want to
Thank you
speak.
for doing this. Oh, yeah, so it's actually, yeah, it's Lori then Tim.
And isn't the fact that it gets voted at town meeting, when town meeting votes to acquire the land for the, you know, all that language, control for.
Natural resources.
Yeah, exactly, that. Then then the next step is to actually move it to the Conservation Commission.
That's correct.
So
this
theoretically, this should have
article is.
happened back in 1965.
And that's exactly why I used the example of the parcel identified as G5611 that was in green on the map.
Right.
The correct protocol was followed after the town of Milton engaged under the Massachusetts Conservation Commission Act, and therefore is subject to the regulations that were put into place by the state in the definitions following those which I read earlier.
Right,
That's
so
right.
that should have happened,
So
and we wouldn't be talking about
in
it.
the ideal, we shouldn't be here if in 1965, the process that was used for the green section had been followed also 2 years later for the brown section and the purple section.
Okay,
Perfect.
and I have just one other question. In the March 63, Article 57, March 63 town meeting, Article 57, we also, the town voted to transfer to the care, custody, management, control of Concom at Cortlandt Circle on 7.85 acres. Is that
that's
7.85?
that's right.
Okay.
The land that was taken for the tax title.
Okay, there was not enough information to assess.
Right, but that's a great point, because if the town meeting authorizes the purchase or the taking first,
Yes.
then the town buys or takes the land, and the deed says to the select board, and not the Conservation Commission,
Correct.
we're stuck with that. That's what happened. It's the sequence. If the town had done it first, and then later on town meeting said, now transfer it, then there would be an issue. But right now, it's in the hands of the select board for general municipal purposes.
Right.
So the sequence is important, town meeting, then the deed.
That's right.
As opposed to the deed first, and then the town meeting.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Would we like to move on to a discussion? If there's no discussion, is there a motion? Kristen,
And make a motion to approve the article.
so there is a motion. To approve the proposed article to see if the town will vote to transfer to the care, custody, management, and control of the Conservation Commission of the 5 parcels that we just delineated by way of our discussion and on the map that we were that we all viewed. So motion to approve.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Judy seconds it. There's a motion, it's been seconded. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Stephen.
Tom?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Julie Joyce?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Jareen?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Julia?
Yes.
JJ?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Judy?
Yes.
And Dave, you are abstaining?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on. Our next agenda item, citizens petition with regards to the transfer of Pope's Pond to conservation. The Warrant Committee is pleased to welcome Diane Augustino, the proponent of the citizens petition. We welcome your presentation.
Thank you very much. Interesting, I don't think I've been before the Warrant Committee since I was on the Warrant Committee 40 years ago. So I appreciate the opportunity, and what I will be doing is listing a number of issues alphabetically and providing documentation to support why this is a concern for the town of Milton, so that we are saved the trouble of doing something that may not technically ever get approved through the state legislature. The article that you have before you, and I don't know if anyone can put it up on Zoom because it's pretty easy. It's to see if the town will vote to transfer to the care, custody, management, and control of the Conservation Commission, and to be subject to the provisions of Article 97, the following parcel of land. It's approximately, and this is a key point, 41.4 acres of land, shown on the town of Milton's assessor's map as map C, block 34A, lot 4, and to authorize the select board to obtain all necessary governmental approvals necessary to accomplish the purpose of this article. During town meeting, you would have heard that the Executive Office of Elder Affairs had, what did I say? Elder Affairs.
And you mean at the
EOEA.
annual town, when you say you would have heard at town meeting, you mean the annual town meeting?
At the May town meeting.
Yes.
You would have heard the presentation that the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, I deal a lot with the Elderly Affairs Division, had noted that Milton had never transferred after proposing to purchase the land, after receiving federal and state funds to purchase Pope's Pond, had never followed through, similar to the discussion you just heard, to transfer Pope's Pond to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. So that would be the final step. And it was a 1963 town meeting article that I have some copies. I don't know if we have enough to go around, and I can always provide you with the PDF of these, which shows that the town, here you go, took that vote back in 1963. And there's even less of these, and then you'll see that, and it's interesting, the article was the exact same number in both town meetings. This moved forward to get the Board of Selectmen to work with the government to get grants in order to purchase this. And it's always very critical when you're looking at property, no matter what it's for, as to whether or not federal and state funds were used. David has the map. There's, you were just discussing properties, and if you just had pulled up the link, the state of Massachusetts has a map that you can just put in there where the Article 97 land currently is. You just zoom in, and I will pass out. But David, you were going to be able to put up the map that I had sent you. But it is a link, and I will send everyone the link. You'll see that Pope's Pond, right across the street from Lamb's Wood, is identified, has Article 97 land already. And remember, that was 41.4 acres of property. And going through old town meetings, as well as the May town meeting, made a few very critical issues come to light. And that's why you have the citizens article before you. Actually, that's interesting that you invited me, because 4 years in a row, I actually did propose enterprise funds for water and sewer. And I don't believe I was ever invited to present. So I do appreciate that. And as you may recall, those who are town meeting members, it wasn't until the Department of Revenue did an audit and enforced the town to abide by the generally acceptable accounting practices. So I do have some history with citizens articles based on the research with state officials. In fact, this is interesting. This Article 37, as you will see, and I think Laurie mentioned it, talks about the Cortlandt land. So it's the exact same process you're looking at. You're looking at, let's get this land for conservation. Let's purchase it. I don't know if Cortlandt was purchased with any outside funds, but it's a very similar process. Also providing you with the land deed that was certified. Sorry, just still have not gotten over the leg issue. So it's very painful. Keep coming before you, talking in pain. This is a painful subject, I suppose. So if you pass these out, this is certified by the town clerk, the Pope's Pond land, and it's identifying the 41.4 plus. There you go. And I'm sure you're not going to be able to read through all of this right this minute or look at the link on the map, but I do ask for you to take the time.
Oh, sorry, were these packets?
No, that was the next one. So were there 2 pages on that one? Right, so that was only 1 page, I think. Are those all the same?
Yeah.
These are 5.
Right, there's 5, that's right, I didn't fold those in half, sorry about that.
Some of those were packets.
So were there extras? There's 5 pages to the deed, certified deed, and you'll see on the side of it by town clerk. Some of these documents were the ones referred to by 2 individuals very familiar with environmental, both Peter Jackson and Tom Palmer. However, I know they did presentations, but I don't know is if I don't believe they ever gave you some of the documents that are easily accessible on our town website. So it's going to be a test at the end. This discusses the purchase of Lamb Woods and the federal funds that were used. Maggie, you want to fold these in half so that they don't, so they realize. In fact, this is the one that mentions Cortlandt Circle, which I found interesting. And it was the article that you just discussed that brought this to my attention, that we, from what we heard at town meeting, the Executive Office of Elder Affairs informed residents, what did I say, Elder again? The EOEEA informed residents that Milton must pass this to move it under the care, custody, and control of the conservation. And it's documented in the Conservation Commission's annual reports. You can find the information pretty readily online, but I thought it might be easier for you to have a little bit. This was the original 1963, the federal grant. This is only one page. And now I'll go through the list of why legally this is before you, even though you may hear later that town meeting in May addressed it.
This is great.
As I pointed out, it's 41.4 plus acres to be transferred. That's A, point A. Point B is that at the May town meeting, the moderator at the first night notified us that he had learned from town council that the bylaw to use the electronic voting devices by town meeting members had not been approved through the Attorney General's Office Municipal Law Unit. That unit, the following night, we heard from the moderator that he had received the approval of the using the electronic devices. So the B factor here is that during these votes, we used the town meeting members used electronic voting devices. However, by law, Mass General Law, I don't have the number right in front of me this minute, Mass General Law requires not just that the AGO Municipal Law Unit approve it, which is the document the moderator held up, but that it be posted in the newspaper by the town clerk for 2 consecutive weeks before it's factually legal, or it's actually legal. And this has been known to the town clerk's aware of it, because this is what she has to do. Town meeting used the electronic voting devices, and town meeting ended, I believe, on May 9th, if I'm correct. The second notice in the newspaper wasn't until May 18th. Therefore, town meeting used devices that, under the law, had not legally been approved to be used. In addition to that, town meeting, you'll remember on the first night, there was a motion made to waive the Milton bylaws. I believe it's Chapter 2, Section 5, but it might be the reverse, to dispense with voice votes. You may also recall that during town meeting, towards the end, and I have not reviewed the video to see if Article 31, 32, which articles it occurred during, but we clearly had voice votes and electronic device votes. So this is a matter of really looking specifically at, did we meet the letter of the law? And if not, what is it going to do to the bigger picture when we try to apply to the EOEEA? Got it right. So May 18th is when those devices became legal. And one of my concerns has the chair of the conservation, look, I just went up the ladder, has the chair of the Commission on Disability, is that the study committee that reviewed the use of those articles had specifically stated, they had voted no, they weren't going to move forward, but that should the town move forward, the town would need to look into the American with Disabilities Act law as to whether or not individuals with disabilities could use the machines, where they could use the machines. I do know there's one person who's very disabled who could not vote. She didn't make it into the auditorium, but I am a staunch, I guess I'm more of a staunch supporter of the American with Disabilities Act than I've ever been due to my current situation. So that's another legal factor, that you used electronic voting devices, both in, I believe the last town meeting was February and then May. And this article before you is being considered to be insignificant, not necessary, because at the May town meeting, we voted Article, was it 31, 32? So that was D. E had to do with the voice vote and then us going back and forth on it. And it's, not that this makes anything legal or illegal, but to think that there's questions on the legality of the way we voted at town meeting, when there should be no question. Every town council throughout the state should know that the Attorney General in Massachusetts, the law requires 2 postings in the newspaper before you can legally approve it. And I have discussed this with Attorney General attorneys, and they've said, yep, that's the law, as well as I first asked the town clerk, and she agreed. So I'm looking at laws that I'm not saying because you broke these laws, you must pass this article this way, and you really need to reconsider. I mean, it's interesting that the Warrant Committee actually had voted no on the land swap. But I wonder what information was properly relayed to the Warrant Committee, because I was not involved in looking into all of these matters at the time. Even if Article 31 was legally voted, the 1963 and 64 articles approved the 41.4, and that's the deed you have in front of you. And that refers to the acres of Pope Pond and to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. However, if you go back and read the article, it talks about Pope's Pond, and it also talks about taking a portion off for a playground. So the 41.4 does not seem, or does not appear, if it was even legal to vote the way we voted last May, does not appear to add up to the 41.4 based on 63 and 64 articles mandating 41.4 go to the conservation. Maybe there would have been a way to say, first we're going to move 41.4 to the conservation, care, custody, and control, and then we're going to consider, is it legal to move part of Article 97 out of their care, custody, and control and build a park? So that's item F. Item G, now H, is an exception that was made to use Pope's Pond in a swap when it is Article 97 land. You can see it on the map. I hope you'll all take a minute to take a look at that map, because you've got a couple of articles in front of you on conservation. And I have never considered myself an environmentalist. However, it's critically important to have the greenery that we have, especially with the airplanes flying overhead, to purify the air that we breathe. I never really considered that until I became impacted by poor air quality. And thank goodness I live up on the Blue Hills, because there's plenty of greenery up there. But it's already Article 97 land, and it was our understanding, and also from Tom Palmer and Peter Jackson's presentations, that it cannot be used as a swap because you're not really adding anything. It's already documented on the state map, and you can call the EEA, which I would strongly recommend that the Warrant Committee, because there's so many articles that deal with conservation land, let's build this here, let's build that there, that maybe a subcommittee could be speaking, because town council, the information received was not accurate according to what we heard from the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs and Energy. Then we go to I. In the school building committee presentation, where they discussed in perpetuity, and this has to do with Pope's Pond, would we need to swap Pope's Pond if in fact Lamb's Wood was in perpetuity? there would be no swap. It would simply be the article before you. You would simply say, okay, we're going to pass this to put all 41.4 acres of Pope's Pond, as we should have done back in 1965, into the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. However, on one of the slides, under Chapter 184, Section 23, I was shocked to see that the word "except" was on either the next line after the strenuous discussion that Lamb's Woods is not in perpetuity, except for particular property purchased for conservation and other purposes. And that comes in Chapter 184, Section 31, where in conservation land, gifted, purchased, however it's obtained, the property, unless it identifies a period of time or it states in perpetuity, then it is in perpetuity because it's conservation land. In reading, I'm not the lawyer, but it clearly, I have had lawyers review it before submitting this article. And it clearly, Chapter 184, Section 23, right on their, one of their slides, it listed, oh, this is not in perpetuity, because it doesn't say it on the deed. It doesn't need to say it on the deed if you read all the rest of that sentence with the exception, and then you research, actually it was Siri who found Chapter 184, Section 31 for me. Siri's my best friend. That's a serious concern, because what are we doing with Pope's Pond? Are we properly conveying 41.4 as we're instructed we're supposed to do, not just by what you can read in front of you, but also by what the agency, the state agency, has informed us? And if so, what do we do from here? Because you can speak. They are working for us. And I'd hate to see us proceed and waste a lot of our students' time if, in fact, we're going through a whole process that numerous laws are certainly brought into question, especially the ability to say that the February and May articles were legally passed. So town council does advise us, and yet the information from town council was also presented more so by the chair of the select board. I didn't bring that law with me, but select board members are not allowed to give legal advice. Who would know? The town has a town council. He has errors and omission insurance. And, if something goes wrong, the town can go back and say, look, this is what you told us. So we heard a lot of legal advice on this matter, the Pope's Pond, Article 97, through most of town meeting. And I really strongly encourage you to do your own research. I can provide all this in PDFs. And there's additional, I didn't get to print everything out for you, but it may look as clear as mud, but I think what you'll find when you depend on the individuals who are at the Attorney General Municipal Law Unit, when you talk to the town clerk, when you talk to the Executive Office of EEA, they are all there to help us. We're paying for those agencies with our tax dollars. So yeah, we're also paying for town council, but when 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2, we need to use all of our resources. And I have heard from state officials, you're correct. Lamb's Wood is not in perpetuity, so therefore why are we taking Pope's Pond and saying that we're gonna split it up? Don't forget, if the article didn't legally pass, then maybe we haven't done that, and maybe we can begin to fix things. I will share one interesting aspect talking to many state officials. I forget the license the person had. He's a forester, licensed forester, and his biggest concern, he had walked Lamb's Wood, he'd walked quite a bit of our conservation land. And he said in the whole state of Massachusetts, Lamb's Wood is called, I believe, upland. It was the most pristine acreage he had ever seen. And to think that it's right near schools and that children, it could be used to educate children on conservation. Because going through this article, and it was only because I saw the article on Cortland, I kept trying to figure out, how am I going to write an article to transfer 41.4 acres to the Conservation Commission? I'm not a lawyer, I don't know how to write it. But when I saw the Cortland article, I said, well, there's the legal language. And that's basically what I did. It's not a matter of what Diane is saying. It's a matter of doing more research, investigating the facts to try to save the time, to make sure things are put in proper order when it comes to what we really want to do, not just for the schools, but for everyday life with the preservation of both conservation wetlands and also conservation upland. I'd never heard of that term. But I found it very fascinating that his suggestion that, it's the perfect place to use to teach children why you need conservation land. In fact, one last thing I did learn is that area is an environmental justice community. So we have individuals living in this area as well in other areas that really don't have the money or the time maybe to come in and say, why are you taking more of our green land away from us? The preservation land away from us that's purifying the air we breathe. I never had heard of environmental justice communities. And you can also, there's a state map, I'll send you the link, that you can locate. This is all in that area. And it's in other areas that we've been looking into. I don't know if you usually ask questions or if you do that later, because I'm just a citizen. I am chair of the Commission on Disability, which did get in there.
And if you don't mind, I am Maggie Oldfield. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 5. And I want to thank Diane for following up on this. My interest in this started back, I think it was in March, when I was part of a site walk to look at all the land that was in the land swap. And it was very personal to me because back in 1978, my father was on the Conservation Commission and he put the Lamb Woods land into conservation. So it was personally quite devastating to see that it was coming out. So when we were on the March site walk, we ended up back here at Town Hall, and it was revealed at that time that the land at Pope's Pond was up kind of for grabs. And we all were a little shocked. I'm 54 years old. I've lived in town my whole life. And in my mind, Pope's Pond was always protected conservation land. So when it was spoken about, it was just a shock. So different residents stood up upstairs and they spoke about their concern. One resident even said it seemed like it was a shell game. And so I had asked at that time, how do we fix it? And the answer was, all you have to do is have town meeting vote to transfer, to finish the process. So when we received the land in 1963, something just happened. It was a clerical error. It never ended up being deeded to conservation. So then I actually called into the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, and I did speak to a gentleman in there. And he was kind of surprised that Milton was using this land as part of the land swap. He verified that we just needed to finish the process. We just needed a town meeting vote to transfer it from the town of Milton, from municipal use to the Town of Milton Conservation Commission. It was a simple process. And I don't know, if anyone is a town meeting member, but I got up at town meeting and I asked and made a motion, a friendly amendment to take the Pope's Pond land out of the land swap because it just didn't belong there. I felt like it was being hijacked for a purpose it was not originally intended for. And unfortunately, my friendly amendment was not accepted, so it was not taken out. And I had sort of, was just discouraged and has kind of been following the process, with some other residents looking, at the state level about Article 97 until, Diane called and she's like, oh, I might have found a way for you to kind of finish your quest.
Legally.
Yeah, legally. And so I said, oh, that's interesting. And she said, not all of the land was put in to conservation in May. We had not put in those 4 acres. So my whole goal is just to put the whole parcel into conservation as our town meeting members voted for back in 1963. And as the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs has advised me personally and has advised our town representatives to do. And it needs to be done, it should be done outside of the complication of the land swap. And this is just a very simple way to do it. And I just please hope that you support it.
There's a question and answer document on the EEA site, and that was one of the points that they made about land that is Article 97, swapping it for land that is 97. The questions were all in there, and I have a lot of PDFs, and I didn't want to inundate you with everything, so I'll share them with David, and he can get them to you.
I have a question. It's actually for Mr. Doyle. Your amendment to bring the Cortland property areas into Concom, why wouldn't you do Pope's Pond last year? What's the difference?
The Article 31 did that,
All of it?
except for the 4 acres that was set aside for the playground, the Purple Park area.
Why wasn't all of it?
Fire department.
Should we, I think, knowing that the Mr. Doyle and Mr. Kiernan were going to be present here tonight, I did discuss with them prior to our meeting that we might ask for their input with regards to this. It's a citizen's petition. We had Diane Augustino has made our presentation. Does anybody have any questions for her at this time?
You have the deed with the 41.4 plus identified,
So if we have other questions for Mr. Kiernan and Mr. Doyle, I would, and Maggie, you can come back too, please. It maybe if you would join us so that we're not shouting across the room and we can be around the table and a certain amount of decorum.
Am I leaving?
No, why don't you stay?
Oh, okay.
Just, what we'll try to do is we'll go one at a time. So if you gentlemen, if you have questions, we can answer them. And we'll go one at a time. Amanda?
Hi, yes.
Okay,
Thanks
Amanda,
for
hold on just a second. So I think that Tim had a question. Tim, was your question answered?
To some extent.
Do you have a follow-up question?
I do, but not this second.
Okay, so I'll put you on the list. Okay, Amanda, would you please go?
Yes, thank you. I guess I have a question because I'm not sure, I'm not clear what a vote in favor of this does to unravel, I guess, what was done for the vote at town meeting. And then I also don't have an understanding of what the attorneys or the town attorneys' perspective is on this. I guess so. I'd be curious about that. So one, are we changing anything that was voted on for town meeting? Does this change anything that was voted on for town meeting as far as the land swap goes? And two, do we have any legal feedback on this?
So Diane, let me ask you that. I mean, in your opening remarks, you said something along the lines of, so we don't do something that might never get approved by the state legislature. A couple times you alluded to proceeding in this process, which I interpreted to be the Article 97 land swap application that is going up to that agency. What's your understanding of the effect that a town vote in favor of your article would have on Articles 31 and 32 from the annual town meeting of last year?
I have spoken, and that's a key point, David. Very key point. The whole issue of the legality of the deed. Lawyers at the State House have told me that's correct. Chapter 184, Section 31. So that would be something that needs to be honestly addressed. You know, to see that it was actually one of the documents in the school building committee's presentation, when you see the word accept, I freeze. I've had to deal with a lot of court cases. I'm not a lawyer. A lot of court cases in the last 9 years. More than 9, 10, both in Florida and Massachusetts. And it's amazing. I think you might know, one of the, some major lawsuit was lost because a comma or a period was missing. So
Okay.
that is the concern.
So that's the concern.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Kieran. This is my question is, did Article 31 of last year's annual town meeting, when the did that have the effect of transferring the Pope's Pond property, the 41 approximate acres that we're talking about? Did that at that time transfer this property to the Conservation Commission? My question being, has this already been done?
Yes. It's a done deal. There should be a deed that follows it, but as between the parties, it's a legal transfer from the Select Board to the Conservation Commission. It's all within the town, but that town meeting vote is a legally binding transfer. A deed will follow for the public record for some other, bona fide purchaser in the usual course, but in this case, it's municipal to municipal. But yes, it is binding, it's done. So at this juncture, the Select Board can't transfer it because the Conservation Commission already has it. You can't give what you don't have.
Will there be a deed?
Yes.
Is that in the process of, what's the process by which we get the deed?
Yes, I'm going to give you a kind of a complicated
Sure.
answer. Before the EOEEA, right now, today, there is a draft bill for the legislature, and we've asked for, or the town has asked for their comments. And part of those comments that we expect is a point that was brought up, and that is whether or not you can trade 97 land for 97 land. The answer is going to be no, you can't. But and Pope's Pond is 97 land. I agree with that. When I say 97, I'm talking about Article 97. The reason it was included in the land swap was because EOEEA asked us to put it there. I was there and I had a conversation. Mr. Doyle was present, the town council was present, the town administrator was present, representatives from the school building committee were present. And we had the discussion, should we put Pope's Pond in the land swap proposal? And Bob O'Connor, who has been traditionally for decades the representative of EOEEA, and two other representatives of EOEEA, we had this conversation on the site on Guile Road. And Bob O'Connor said, and I heard it, and Mr. Doyle heard it, yes, please put that into the land swap proposal. Open space is good. It is 97 to 97, so they'll have to look elsewhere for the numerical calculation. But they wanted us to add that. It's important to them because, I go back to the charter that I said before, preserve and enhance the open space. And that's what getting Pope's Pond does for us. Is it 97? Yes, it is. Does it technically count? No, it doesn't. But it's their request that we put it in there because it advances the ball. And the ball that I'm talking about is the goal, the general societal goal of preserving and enhancing open space.
So I'll just say, I don't disagree with that statement. And when I talked to Bob Wilbur in at the EOEEA, he agreed that it should be in. So there's not a disagreement that the land should be in conservation. When I spoke to Mr. Wilbur, he said he just expressed surprise that it was part of the land swap because his concern was that the land swap may or may not have been approved. And they, EOEEA, just want the land protected. And at that point in time, the closest town meeting was in May. So it sort of made sense to sort of put it in on the May town meeting because it requires a town meeting vote. But the fear was that if it was tied up into the land swap and the land swap at town meeting did not pass, or in the long run it's not approved, the fear was it was not going to end up where it should have been as town meeting members in 1963 voted.
Okay, so,
Two different
okay, hold on.
names. Bob Wilbur is not Bob O'Connor.
So, we're not rehashing the land swap.
Correct.
Also, we're at the point of our meeting where the warrant committee is asking questions from our presenters. So it's not a time for a tit for tat and a back and forth. So from this point on, I would ask for all comments to be directed to the chair. Thank you. Judy has her hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just go back to last spring when I was researching about, Article 31 and Pope's Pond came up, I actually tracked down a town meeting member from 2001, I believe. Oh, that's a different swap. But when I was researching, all that had to be done they came together, two different things, but with the same solution, if you will. Once town meeting authorizes something, it automatically goes to the town council, who automatically sends it to the Attorney General's office. That's the process. So if we leave Pope's Pond entirely out of any article discussion, and we just pick Turner's Pond, I know it's already in conservation, but once town meeting goes and approves, let's definitely get Turner's Pond into conservation. For all the good reasons there are out there, as Concom always mentions. And now it automatically, with no further ado, ends up at the town council, whoever that person is at that particular time, who then sends it to be certified. That's the only piece that was missing on the Pope's Pond town meeting approval. They in 63, they did it. It goes through the town council, seamlessly goes to be approved and stamped, comes back to the town, got the Concom stamp on it, all's well. There's no further ado after town meeting. It all loops through town council to Attorney General, who then gets it to the proper environmental group and just stamp, 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 stamp. In the process of leaving the town council, it never left. It stayed there for whatever reason or oversight that was non-malicious. It's being referred to as a clerical error. And rightly so. It was a clerical error. It didn't pass past our town council. In that regard, Pope's Pond could have been resurrected again without being part of Article 31. So we're not going to rehash 31, and I do agree with you. It didn't have to go through Article 31. It was a shortcut. It could have been done very easily as a standalone, and perhaps should have been not attached to another article. And it would have processed a tad bit slower, maybe, but it would have been processed. And we wouldn't be here today redoing Pope's Pond. It would have already been done. That's my comment, I guess. Not so much a question, but my understanding through my research. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I'm looking at, the citizen's petition is to transfer the 41 acres approximately to the Conservation Commission. The recommendation, and it was a vote at town meeting with regards to Article 32, the language, and in consideration thereof, transfer the following land to the Conservation Commission, which are also shown on plans, copies of which. Item 5, approximately 41 acres of land located around and inclusive of Pope's Pond shown on the town of Milton's assessor's map, etc. So it would appear that there was a vote by town meeting in Article 32 that these lands would go to the Conservation Commission. Diane, what say you to that?
I have spoken to the Attorney General Municipal Law Unit, so I do know that use of the electronic voting devices was not legal.
So other than the legality of the use of electronic voting devices.
In addition, a portion of the 41.4 plus, and I'm trying to find it because I know we have it, Maggie.
It's number 5. You're correct. It was number 5, but continue reading.
You need to
down.
finish reading.
Why don't you guide me? Read what, please?
Yes, speak into the mic.
A portion of which not to exceed 4 acres shall be transferred to the care, custody, management, and control of the Parks and Recreation Department to be used for the creation of a playground.
Okay.
So that is not to the Conservation Commission. To the parks, it's to the Parks Department.
So I'm looking at the warrant from the town website.
So I don't know if you're
Mine
looking.
ends at 5. Mine ends at, bear with me.
It was amended.
You're not looking at the amendment one, you're
Okay.
looking at the written warrant, but as you know, it was changed several times at the last minute.
Right. So it would appear that the vote was that the land be transferred to the Conservation Commission, but for the acreage with regards to the playground at Peverly Park,
If it was legal.
if it was legal. Mr. Kennedy, what's your take on that?
That's correct. I'm looking at it right now. Approximately 41 acres of land located around and inclusive of Pope's Pond, shown on the town of Milton assessors maps, a portion of which not to exceed 4 acres shall be transferred to the care, custody, management, and control of the Milton Parks and Recreation Department to be used for the creation of a playground. And so it's a carve-out. The reason for the carve-out is to avoid a potential Article 97 issue, because parks would then be going from passive recreation, or if the Conservation Commission had it, all of it, it would be passive recreation. If Parks gets it, it's active recreation. We didn't know if that's going to trigger an Article 97 dispute. So the easiest way to accommodate the Parks Department in the creation of the playground was to just carve it out. You asked a question before about the deed. The problem with actually signing the deed today is that we need to know where to put the playground. And when I say where, it goes back to the jurisdictional control of the Conservation Commission, not the ownership, but the jurisdictional control. Because if it's the pond, there's a 100-foot jurisdictional measurement with a 25-foot non-disturbed. If it's next to Pine Tree Brook, that's a perennial stream, it's a 200-foot jurisdiction. But the inner riparian zone, which is 100 feet, you can't build on. So we have to make sure that the playground is outside of the no build, either 25 feet from the pond or 100 feet from the stream where it enters, and it'll be on the entrance side, the upstream side, nearer to Canton Avenue. So the reason that the deed is being held up right now is because somebody's got to get one of those CAD programs and figure out where to put the playground. And then we'll have the boundary, the meets and bounds for the deed. But the transfer is already legally accomplished when it went from the select board for general municipal purposes to the Conservation Commission with a carve-out. That's done. Now, the only issue that's pending right now is where to put those up to 4 acres. It probably won't take 4 acres, but wherever the playground is going to be maneuvered so as to stay out of the non-disturbance zone. So we're just looking for meets and bounds, but that's not necessary to make the town meeting vote a legal decision that the town made.
You're waiting for meets and bounds on the playground.
Yes, that's correct. But that doesn't change it's going to either conservation or parks. That's done. And therefore, this proposal would be to ask the town to approve a transfer from the select board to the Conservation Commission. But the select board doesn't own it. The Conservation Commission does.
So when you say this proposal, you mean the citizens petition
Yes.
that we are talking about now. You're saying that the select board can't transfer it over because the Conservation Commission already has it, except for the Parks Department that has some of it pending. What the designation of some of it is by meets and bounds pursuant to this deeding process that you're talking about.
You are correct.
Does anyone have, okay, Maggie, I was getting a sense that do you have a question or a comment, Maggie?
So it just goes back to what was said earlier about the other piece of property, which I fully support. I fully support all land going into conservation. We're not making any more land. We need all the land we can have under protection. But as you stated earlier,
Maggie, directed.
when Mr. Kiernan stated earlier, town meeting has already designated the land as conservation. And even though it's only 4 acres, it's still 4 acres. And I don't think that we should wait for, the state to approve the meets and bounds. These 4 acres should be in conservation. It should go to the Conservation Commission. And then after that process is done, if town meeting wants to take a vote to transfer those 4 acres to the park department, that's another step. I don't have an opinion at this point in time as if the Parks Department needs the land or they don't need the land. I'm just trying to follow through what was said in 1963. 1963, town meeting voted for all this land to go to Conservation Commission. And I feel like it is the law. We need to finish the process, and all the land needs to go to the Conservation Commission. And then after that happens, then it opens up another discussion. And now is just the time to do it. It's the right time to do it. We've been waiting since 1963 to do it, and it just should be done.
Thank you. We have a question from JJ. JJ.
Thank you. My question is for Ms. Oldfield and Ms. Tulio D'Agostino. I hope I said that right.
Thank you.
Sorry. I guess my question is, it seems like Mr. Kiernan has said a couple of times that the land actually is in conservation. It's there. So do you just not think that what he is saying is correct? Because if what he's saying is correct, the petition doesn't really need to be done. Would that be correct?
Unfortunately, it is not correct. And the article, the Attorney General is aware of the electronic voting device issue. And the articles that are under discussion, I believe, also are still sitting at the Attorney General. So to say it's a done deal, it's not, there's a lot of legal issues here.
And for me, I just want the land protected, and if it's already in conservation, that's fine, just show me the deed, and then I'll just, we could talk about putting the 4 acres into conservation, but I haven't seen that there's a current deed held by the Conservation Commission for this. So I'm sort of hoping that this is ensuring that all this land will end up in conservation. It could be a long time, as the Article 97 works its way out, and I'm just afraid that it's going to get held up. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I just want to see this land protected, and I am not confident that it will be protected.
Okay, but I guess my question here is, you're afraid it's not going to go, but Mr. Kiernan has already said that it is there.
Judy.
Yeah, so maybe just show me the deed.
Okay. Show me the money. Judy.
Well, for May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember at our deliberations / discussions last year, I questioned on several occasions to various people the use of Pope's Pond. I sort of attached myself to that one specific aspect of Article 31. And if I may pass through you to Mr. Kiernan, I remember being at the COA at a rather well-attended meeting, and I directly asked you about Peverly Park. And the reason I did is I had gone to a 2-hour meeting at the CPA funding committee, and it was about Peverly Park. So I already had a lot of knowledge about it, and I found it interesting. And I remember bringing that up to you that evening. And of course, we all could go back on MATV to fact check that. And at the time, I said, how will this affect Peverly Park if we put it into conservation? And you said, not at all. We'll just move it around. And we can fact check that. Then after that, I got knowledge of the 1963. And I go to myself and maybe expressed it to others. We're just doing Peverly Park, and can we do that on conservation land? If it's already conservation land. However, Concom thinks it doesn't matter if we make it conservation land, we can still build a park. Mr. Chair, I just bring that up, that I seem to hear a different answer this evening than last spring over the issue of Pope's Pond and Peverly Park, asked directly to the chair of Concom and gathering information. So I'm guessing my comment is just that and not really a question.
Thank you, Judy. Mr. Kiernan, would you like to respond? Give you an opportunity to.
Yeah, simply that I think I'm in agreement with respect to moving the playground around. We need to stay out of the non-disturbance zone for the town, and we need to stay out of the inner riparian zone for the state. So we're going to have to move the playground, and that's what the survey is, that's what it's for. And with respect to the 97 aspect, we're trying to avoid a problem by going from passive recreation to active recreation. And that's why there's a carve out of the up to 4 acres. But the idea is still to protect all 41.4 acres.
I understand that you are under the impression that the voting method that was used to pass the articles at the last town meeting will be found to have been illegal. But until that happens, there's nothing we can do currently to act on that. And so I guess I don't understand how the article you've proposed has anything to do with that now in our current state where it has not been ruled illegal yet.
I have not called the town clerk today to find out if the Attorney General Municipal Law Unit moved forward. So technically, it's still sitting at the Select Board and is not under the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission. I would love pages 3 and 4 from the deed, if anyone has them. I'm sorry I passed it out that way, but that Attorney General's unit, the lawyer there did confirm it has to go in the newspaper, so that was verified.
Right, but until any of that happens, there's nothing to act.
Nothing to act on at all.
Right.
Because the article from May
that's
didn't
my
work.
point, is the article you proposed doesn't do anything in the meantime. And according to Mr. Kearney, the land is already in possession of the Conservation Commission. So I guess I don't understand what we're left with in light of the fact that what you're claiming will happen has not happened yet.
It's not only a matter of what hasn't happened, may not happen. It's the fact that town meeting in 63, and then federal and state funds were used in 64 to purchase 41.4. There was a carve out. So this article cleans up the situation by moving it all legally to the Conservation Commission. And it will be, I mean, that electronic voting devices took far longer than they ever
But it
expected.
has already been moved to the Conservation Commission, we've been told tonight.
Maybe you could explain it better.
Well, the question was directed to you, ma'am. Is that your answer?
The answer is the Attorney General's Office, Municipal Law Unit, has the final approval. And I didn't call today to check, but if the Attorney General's Municipal Law Unit does not approve an article, the example being the electronic voting devices, if they don't approve it, it hasn't moved forward. I could actually tell you that there's an article before you regarding the MBTA that says by right, but as you know, the Attorney General Municipal Law Unit, they have to approve these articles, and then it has to be printed in the paper for 2 weeks. So to say that it's already a done deal is not accurate.
But we're spending money in the budget that we passed. Like, we have to have faith. We have to have faith that we pass these articles, we do these things, there's a process, there's a sign off, but we continue on with the plan of the day.
That is being looked into.
Okay. Amanda has a question. Amanda.
Sorry, thank you. I think my question was very similar. I think just trying to understand the points that we are talking about. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, and I think this was just answered, the issue right now is the legality of the vote. And then I guess the second question I have is around the playground. That as well was included in Article, I don't have it in front of me, Article 32. So the town already voted to approve the land for both conservation as well as transferring it to the Parks Department. So again, I guess I'm not clear on the issue around that piece as well. So I'm just trying to understand if the entirety of this warrant, if this article is around the legality of the vote.
From my perspective, it's also around the 4 acres. The 4 acres are not in conservation. They were transferred to the Parks Department.
But I guess my question is, wasn't that part of the article? That was written that way in the article, and that's the article that passed, correct?
Correct, and it should have said the Conservation Commission. All the total land.
But I guess my question is, didn't Mr. Kiernan answer that, which was to say this was carved out knowing that it would, up to 4 acres would be used for this purpose, so that it was done kind of all in one article as opposed to doing it in 2 articles, and that's the way that it passed. So I guess I just don't understand the need to go back and adjust that. If that's what passed and the intent is for there to be a land designated for a playground and the remainder of the land is in conservation. So I guess that is the majority of this question around the legality of the vote. And the second is there a question about the playground, the way that the way that land is designated, and are we questioning the vote that passed for the article that passed? I'm just trying to understand that.
A major point that I think I've made a few times, and with the comments being made, seem to be being dismissed. Until the Attorney General's Municipal Law Unit, where the town clerk sends certain articles, and these are some of the articles, until they approve it, and it's printed in the newspaper 2 weeks in a row, then it is not law. So I understand you're hearing different things, but you can look that Mass General Law up yourself. Very easy. Or you could call the town clerk who can explain it to you because she has to do the newspaper print. It was upsetting to learn that. And it was upsetting for the attorney at the AGO Municipal Law Unit to learn it.
Jay's next.
Okay, it's a question, or a couple questions for the chair of the Conservation Commission. So, and I want to thank our guest for bringing this material. It's very helpful. I'm looking at what was passed by the town back in the 60s, which said, talking about Pope's Pond, allow the town to purchase it for the preservation and utilization of open space. Now, what you taught me an hour ago means that's Article 97 land, is that correct? Because it was purchased for the preservation of open space.
Yes, but just be aware of the sequence, because the town meeting acted before we had the land. They authorized the select board to go out and purchase it.
Okay.
So the select board didn't have it then. So when they purchased the land, it went to the select, perhaps they're correct. It should have gone to the Conservation Commission, but it didn't.
Well, but it didn't. Okay.
So
but
the town meeting was before the conveyance.
Okay, but then, and then it has Article 97 protection.
Yes.
Okay. So am I correct in that one difference, the way my simple mind thinks of it, a difference between Article 97 protection and Conservation Commission protection is if it's Article 97 land but not conservation, you can build a soccer field on it. You can build a playground on it specifically. Is that correct? Article 97 land, you can build a park on. You can build a playground.
Well, I agree with you. I think you can, but there are other people that say if you shift from passive recreation to active recreation, it's going to trigger 97. That's why we have the carve out.
Well, but
we
isn't
wanted to avoid that?
I mean, aren't all the parks, Kelly Field, et cetera, aren't those Article 97 land?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
It's a change in use. That's what triggers. It's a change in use.
Okay.
That triggers 97.
But to be clear, if it's under the control of the Conservation Commission, can you then build, well, in this case, a playground on it? I thought the answer was no.
It's the same. Well, it's the same issue. Now we're the owner, and we're shifting from ownership to jurisdiction to Article 97.
Well, I mean,
those are the three that
that's the thing in front of us. The thing in front of us says we want to give all of it to the Conservation Commission. If we do that, would we then be able to build a playground on it?
All I can say is we, the Conservation Commission, and Town Council were concerned that if we did that, someone could challenge it on the basis that if we're giving away 97 protected land, then we have to get in exchange for that non-97 protected land. So that would require the Parks Department to give us at least a 1-to-1 ratio. So Parks would have to come up with non-97 land and give to us.
So if those 4 acres went to the Conservation Commission, are we safe in saying that at least it's going to be harder to build a playground there, or it's going to be more risky to build a playground there? Is that safe to say?
You're safe to say that.
Okay, there are no absolutes, it sounds like, but it's...
Correct. We were being cautious, with the advice of Town Council, to carve out, to send it to the Parks Department. So we wouldn't have to retransfer it. It's the retransfer and the change in use that'll trigger 97.
Okay. I think I understand. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Tom?
I don't know who could answer this. Whose name is on the deed now? Whose name is on the deed?
On Pope's Pond? I forget the grantor's name, but it went to the town as in the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so the Board of Selectmen
Yes.
with the grantee.
And it's carried by the assessors as general municipal purposes.
Okay, so frankly, the change and what we're talking about here, right, the Article 97 designation is more of something that's like a thought up in the air, right? It's not, let me step back. The deed has independent legal significance. The select board owns the land, right? Yes. Article 97 is this kind of up in the air.
It's a different issue.
Yes, it totally, so if we do transfer, right, to you, you own the land, right? And the select board has no jurisdiction over the land moving forward, and you can deal with it as you deem appropriate, pursuant to the appropriate support of other committees.
The simple answer is yes, more complicated, we're all town, we're all part of it.
Oh, no, I mean that. So I'm just talking in like legal. So a transfer of the deed would just frankly give you and your committee full jurisdiction and control to.
It would be public notification of that, but our position is that that's already been done by the vote of the town meeting.
True, but the letter of the law is what I'm talking about. So it's the stamp at the registry that controls.
The registry is what defines the public's notification. It's
Yes.
like husband and wife do it all the time.
Way more articulate than.
Transfer, from tenants in common to tenants in the entirety, but you don't record it.
Yeah.
It's good between the parties that did it, but it doesn't protect you against a bona fide purchaser from outside. The purpose of recording is to formalize and to notify the public that that's what's happened.
Absolutely, and to I guess my overall point, a transfer legally in this method through the registry, but allow the Conservation Commission the full control, carve-outs, other things that you deem the experts on land conservation deem appropriate.
Yes.
Fair? And it furthers your mission.
Yes.
To protect the open space and the land. Okay. That's it. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Jareem. What's that?
Judy.
So it's Judy? Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking forward to hearing from Jareem. Judy!
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Tom so eloquently, went to the letter of the law, if I could make a comment, in 1963, this was already done. We gave it to the Conservation Committee. A little blip in a clerical error didn't get that little stamp on it for all these years. And I questioned it because it seemed so easy to make it standalone and just correct the error made. It would be, and then once, as Tom said, once it is in, the error is corrected, it does say conservation land now. No mistake about it. The deed reflects that. Stamp, stamp. And now conservation in its jurisdiction can carve out for Peverly Park. It may be an extra step, but it will be allowable. Peverly Park doesn't have to be lost. It just has to wait a few more minutes to get done. But that the land where Peverly Park was sort of approved in a not erroneous manner, but in a not fully knowledgeable manner. Peverly Park is not in danger. It will happen. But the original 1963, I believe, has to be upheld. The town has an obligation.
Judy, can we hold comments and speeches to our discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Wrong place.
Thank you.
All right, well, I won't bring it up in discussions.
Right, because we want to finish up sort of like the Q&A.
Okay.
Okay, does anybody have any?
I thought we were going through you, and I guess it's wrong.
So,
okay,
before we get to the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions?
I just went to the assessor's office where you can find ownership. Remember, the language is care, custody, control, because conservation takes extra care, custody, control. Are we assuming, which I hate assuming things without knowing the law, that ownership is the same as care, custody, and control, because ownership is a different word, And the only property, there's only one property listed in the assessor's office as being Town of Milton Conservation Commission. It's a lousy 61 square feet off Randolph Ave. There's no other on the assessor's site, no other
Okay.
compound. Just an FYI.
Thank you for that. Does anyone have any other questions for our guests? Thank you for your participation here tonight.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Hopefully we tried to make it easy,
No,
but it is
No,
complicated.
it's important. It's important. Thank you. Okay, so I will open up for discussion. And Judy, if you would like to be recognized, I would open it up to you first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for my confusion. At some point, we were going through you instead of being direct, and I think I lost track of where we were on that. I stand by my comment that I made in the wrong spot, that this citizen's petition should be given some credence here. It just always was conservation land. We don't know when it's going to come through Article 31. It could be tomorrow. It could be 2 years from now. I believe that it's more expeditious to get it through this way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Judy, when you say expeditious to do it this way, you mean by you would be in favor of the citizens petition?
I believe I am.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jay?
To me, just trying to oversimplify it, it sounds like if this citizens petition were to do what it intends to do, which it sounds like it's a question whether it could or not.
Sorry, we're all on mute.
Oh, well, okay.
Somehow the Zoom went mute. Can we fix that, please? I can't hear Jay.
Michael.
Am I? No, my microphone should be on. Can someone else speak?
I think it's, I may have done that by mistake.
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're back. Okay, so it sounds like it's a question, there's one question of, would the citizens petition even do what it intends to do? But let's say it does. Then the main difference would be that it would transfer all the land, including the land that a lot of us want for a playground. And I tried, when I talked to the chair of the Conservation Commission, it sounds like there's no black and white. There's no absolute yes or absolute no. But it does sound like it's less likely that we will get a playground there if we first put it into conservation. Because if you put it in, right now it's being held, and I'm reading the original document, for the preservation and utilization of open space. That includes parks, that includes conservation land. So it sounds like we can probably put a park there now because that's within the realm of what you can do with Article 97 land. But if we move it to conservation, then you can't put a park there. So then you have to move it out of conservation, but moving something out of conservation is difficult and fraught. So all that leads me to think the main effect of this would be to make the playground, I will say, less likely, because we don't have a solid yes or a solid no. So I'm certainly inclined to, I think I would want to send this to the select board for further study rather than recommend that the town accept this. In fact, is it appropriate to make a motion at this point?
Well, this is a citizen's petition.
Just a polite way of saying that. Well, we've sent a year and a half ago, we sent a citizen's petition for further study. It was
Which one?
The citizen's petition that was ADU. So there was the first ADU, and the second ADU is a citizen's petition. And town meeting sent that to, I believe, the planning board for further study.
That was town meeting.
I double checked.
Town meeting.
Town meeting did. Well, we're recommending what we want town meeting to do.
Citizen petition just goes on, right?
Well, it's on the warrant, sure, yes.
I don't think that the select board takes a position on the citizens petition.
Yeah, Mr. Zulu said he can't.
I'm saying, sorry if I'm making things more complicated, I'm saying, just like they did with the ADU, they said, this issue, let's have a board look at it. I mean, it's sort of a polite way of saying no, so that's one thing, but I'm just saying this issue, I don't want to dismiss all the issues, I want to have a board look at it. But if that is going to cause problems and keep us here for another hour, then I don't mean to do that.
Well, we're not in a hurry. Right? It's only 10 o'clock. So, okay, do you have anything else to add, Jay? So you're thinking about making a motion to...
If it's appropriate to make a motion.
All right, we could. Why don't we, let's out with it a little bit more. Like,
Okay.
Right? Let's out with it a little bit more. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? What do we think about his
I'd like to see what the state says about the whole voting thing. If the deed actually ends up being transferred, because if it doesn't, that protects the land. I know it's...
No, but if
worst case.
The worst case scenario, if the state has a problem with the electronic voting at the town meeting, the whole thing is gone, all of it. So I would caution us to operate under the assumption that our last town meeting is going to be completely thrown out. Like I was saying before, we got to have some faith that there's going to be. We make decisions, we move on. Some of them go to Boston for approval and posting, and things work their way through the system. We're spending money, right? If the electronic voting throws it all out, what's that do to our budget? Right? We have to, so we could wait. We can do whatever, as our vote can be what our vote. So we have sort of a sense of maybe waiting a little bit, just planning it some more. What else do people have to add?
I feel like we can only act with the information we have now, so I would be inclined to not do a version of waiting, but instead either say no or pass on to a board for further review or something. And then if in the event that the whole town election gets thrown out, they can come back with this again or a version of it based on that information. But I feel like this is trying to act on information we don't yet know to be true. It feels a little gymnastics to me.
Tom?
Mr. Chair, I'll just throw some things out there. I guess, we did rehash. I guess we're in the process of rehashing last year's vote. And, this is one of the issues that I found out during all our deliberations and conversations was that it was never transferred initially. I was kind of stuck on that for a while. But, when I look at the citizens petition, and I kind of frankly thought it would be done after the fact, after our meeting, that it would be transferred. But I understand there are nuances and there are certain things that need to be done and stuff. But when I look at this, I look at the transfer of the property to the Conservation Commission. They're the experts. We're talking about the possibility of a playground, which I'm in favor of, and I think that is, a good idea for the town. I don't think it's closing the door on that if we do, but I think that moving it into conservation, I think, is a good idea because it provides for those protections of open space. It allows the Concom to fulfill their mission. It allows us to begin to work on our master plan, which we've been talking about, open space and conservation and a plan. This is a plan. This is moving forward with that. And if we're gonna do a little extra work to carve out for the lawyers, this 4-acre playground, I think we would do it as a town, but I think it needs to be done correctly. And back in the '63, I know it was a long time ago, but that's what we decided to do. We used federal and state funds. So I don't know. Those are just some things for, but I know this is a mess. This is years away, I think, in terms of the approval, the land swap, schools, playgrounds. So I don't think a vote on supporting the petition going forward and seeing if the town would consider it, I don't think it would be a bad thing, but I get nervous when the land open space isn't in Concom full control. So that's what really is kind of driving a lot of my comments now. And the protection of that open space, which, not to bring up last year, but I think it's very important, especially where we live, building, MBTA, ADUs, density. I think, we got to protect what little that we have, as Planning Board member Oldfield stated.
What do you think about the vote on the article where it said, and we went through that, this Article 32, that the 41 acres goes to the Conservation Commission, except for the carve-out, which was the red line that was done, the amendment that was done. In the testimony that is being forwarded up, these are drafted, we may have effectuated this. Do you think that we might not have? And when I say effectuated this, like
I think the idea we have, but not the legal situation, not the legal structure, which I think it should be. So we've transferred it, but I think there's still.
But we don't have the deed.
We don't have the deed, and I think that in the end, it really signals to all, but anyone else claiming ownership, that it's in the care, custody, control of the Concom. And I understand this is really layered, this whole thing, but because I was still really just stuck on why this wasn't done, decades ago.
But isn't the lack of deed just an issue of the process playing out and the paperwork being done, not any sort of gaps or nefarious anything? Like my impression from what we learned tonight was that it's all happening. It is, the process. The wheels are in motion. It just is a process and takes time. Maybe I misunderstood that.
No, but I don't think there's anything nefarious I'm saying. I just think that, I've been waiting 60 years for it to be done.
For this night.
So another say, and I'm being joking when I say that. I'm just saying just seal the deal. And we'll do the extra work, carve it out, do this. Playgrounds are great. And I think kids on that side of town should have a nice playground.
Nothing over there.
Closest one is over by Capon Street. Hard issues, tough things, but let's do it right and not be sloppy. But like I said, it's just something that was notes I was making as everybody was talking, so.
Kristen.
Yeah, I guess the only thing would be is, what if town meeting was in May, 5 months later? And it's very complicated, but if it didn't get done in 1960, I guess that's maybe the hang up of it didn't get rubber stamped then, just to kind of seal the deal and say, okay, but.
It's hard.
I don't think there's anything serious.
No.
Well, and do we have any guarantees that doing this would be any more of a surefire way to getting there? Like if it's falling down at the deed stage, I think that's what needs to be looked into rather than trying to do it in a different way.
So I think the citizens' proposal is moot because the property is under the control of the Conservation Committee. So the Select Board doesn't own it anymore. So I think that addresses, it's just the proposal it can't go forward because the Select Board doesn't have, control over that property. And I think absent some legal determination that would tell us that the May town meeting vote is illegal, I don't think there's any reason to think it's illegal. I mean, I think there's maybe some thought that there could be concerns about devices, but until there's a decision, that vote should be binding on us, right? I mean, we don't just pick and choose which laws we don't like that got passed. It's not, doesn't feel right. So
Amanda, and then JJ. Amanda.
Thank you. Yeah, I would agree as well. That I guess for me, it feels like I don't understand what we're unraveling if we do that. And maybe it's nothing, but I feel like there were 2 votes that passed in the Maytown meeting, which addressed this. And short of finding out that there is some legal reason why the vote, it wasn't cast legally, or that it wasn't passed legally, it doesn't feel like it's something that we should be revisiting because it passed. Do you know what I mean? Like the vote passed, the town voted on it. Unless there's a legal reason that we need to go back and look into it, I'm not quite sure why we're opening this can of worms.
Thank you, Amanda. JJ?
I'll save us some time. I agree with the previous 2 speakers. Well said. Thank you.
Yeah, this is just, Amanda made just her comments. Amanda, thank you. And then I was just thinking, I don't think it really undoes anything. I know the other points it's moot, and I understand that, but I don't think it undermines the land swap deal in any way. I think we made a decision based upon what we had then, right? And we're talking now, well, it's not really, it's the same, right? We have a concept under Article 97, then we have the deed, which is the legal. It's kind of operating under these 2. So I don't think that's going to wreck the analysis. I think this is just really kind of tying things off with town meeting. Like I said, from my perspective, giving our great ComCon control of that property to protect it. So, I don't know, that's just, I appreciate the comment. It made me think about that, so.
Jay?
Can I just address? Yeah, I don't know the law, but I worry it's like pulling out a Jenga tower or something that we said, this was not the Article 97 land swap. This was the payment for the land. Mm-hmm. And we said, we will essentially pay the Conservation Commission by giving them these 5 parcels of land, and here's one of them. And if then, and again, if this could take effect, if we then say, oh, no, we're going to give you this for free, well, then what did we pay the conservation for the land? Well, we're supposed to pay them 5 things, but one of them we've already given to them. And so now what are we paying them? It makes my brain hurt.
It's this these ideas of concepts about the ownership of the property and the control versus like what most of us know, like, buy a house, you sign the deed, they put the stamp on it. Meets and bounds and all that stuff. So that's why I said that. I think we were operating under certain facts and aspects, and I think they were right, and we did what we did. But in terms of this, I don't think. But then again, Jay, there are several unknowns here.
And one more thing, if it's possible, you're concerned about the protection. It's got, as I was educated an hour and a half ago, by terms of the purchase, it's got Article 97 protection, which is not as strong as Conservation Commission protection. That's why we think we can build a playground on it. But it's got some protection now. So.
Well, it's like you got the house, Jay, but you don't really have the house. You know what I mean? Like, you can live in it until you die. Until you die, but you're not ever really going to get the piece of paper. So I'm going to stop. Right. We can go back. We can go. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Your brain doesn't start to hurt till somebody talks about the rule against perpetuities. Okay. JJ.
I guess I kind of think it does undermine the, I don't know, again, I think the Jenga block is a good analogy in that, this thing has been passed and they're moving forward with it with these 5 pieces of property as Jay stated, payment or whatever, but are they going to have to stop and start the whole process again if all of a sudden we yank one of these Jenga pieces out? I mean, does it make it, I don't know. I mean, and again, I don't know, if you pass it directly to conservation, what Mr. Kiernan was saying is that it's less likely to get a playground there because you're putting all 41 acres into conservation immediately. And so that's not clean. That's definitely not clean for the people who wanted a playground. So I don't know why we're doing this. I don't, but.
Thank you, JJ. Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to the previous speaker, having gone to the initial CPA meeting on the playground at Pebberley Park, I was very encouraged to see a little playground there, and I followed it. It was a great meeting. It was a great idea. And I go back to the night we met at the COA, and I asked directly to Mr. Kiernan the question about Pebberley Park. And I said, how will Pebberley Park be affected by this being a conservation land? And again, we can fact check this. We can go to MATV archives. He indicated not at all. I was pleased to hear that. I feel as though this petition does the same thing that Mr. Kiernan said at that meeting when questioned directly, will Pebberley Park be in jeopardy if we do add Pope's Pond? At that time, I wasn't clear it was already in conservation land. I was only told it was going there. I felt confident in the answer that I got, that the playground would be secure. And again, the playground is still secure under this method. It's going to take an extra step. And I don't seem to find a problem with the extra step. I still feel assured that the little playground that, I started to follow will happen. And if I thought it wouldn't, I might have a different opinion. But I feel secure that the town can have this happen. It's just a matter of transferring jurisdiction. It's been done before. They do it a lot, more than we can think. If you start following little parcels of land around town. And again, I feel secure that we will one day see a Pebberley Park, perhaps sooner than going through the articles that were passed last May. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Amanda?
Thanks. I think, I appreciate all of the work that was done, and I appreciate anytime somebody brings forward a citizen's petition. I think where I am having a difficult time is that, as we've all kind of pointed out, and with the questions and the arguments that are being put forward, is that there are nuances that maybe we don't fully understand. And this is a petition that I don't think we have the insight of anyone from town council, anybody weighing in on, what the impact of this would be, or what the effect of the previous votes would be on the articles that were voted forward. And so I think there's information that was presented, which was informative, but I don't know. I don't know from a factual standpoint that I don't know that I have all of the facts in order to say that this is something I would be comfortable voting on, and not knowing the implications of the vote should this pass, because there's no sort of subject area expertise, and there's no legal point of view on this. And so I think that's the place where I'm struggling, is that I don't have that understanding. And so it just doesn't feel like a really complete picture for me to be able to vote on, or to support, I should say.
Jay.
Can I ask one of our guests a question?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Kiernan?
Yes.
The MATV people will want you at the microphone.
Okay.
So if hypothetically this entire land was transferred to the Conservation Commission, what, in your best guess, would then be the process to get a playground built at Beverly Park?
The playground group committee representative would have to file a notice of intent. And that would, again, it depends on where it is, but it would trigger a permit process by the Conservation Commission. The problem that I identified before is, according to town council, and the reason for the carve-out is that if we were to change the use, the Conservation Commission already supports the playground, by the way. We actually passed a resolution that supported the Beverly Park Playground, and we submitted our resolution to the Community Preservation Act Committee. So we are supportive of it. So it would come before us, and I think it would have pretty solid support to put the playground in that area. The difficulty comes from town council's concern that changing the use from passive recreation to active recreation would trigger 97. And if that happened, and we're giving it to the park department for the playground, the park department would have to come up with non-97 land to give to us. The park department doesn't have any extra non-97 land. So they don't have any, it's a consideration. So we give up 97 land, somebody's got to give us back non-97 land.
4 acres. 4 acres
Well,
at
yes,
least?
absolutely, at least, right. Okay. Conservation Commission is looking for a better deal than 1-for-1, but yes, at least.
For a playground.
And while EEOC looks for more than 1-to-1, EEA also looks for more than 1-to-1. Because they have to approve it and then go to the legislature for Article 97 approval.
So the park department would have to somehow give you more than 4 acres or more
of non-97 land.
Okay.
And I don't believe the park department has it.
And again, nothing's black and white, but we think we avoided that with the way it was.
That's why the carve-out is there, yes. Because it's already a 97 swap. That's why Park Department is involved in the Article 31 and 32 that was passed. They're part of the transfer too. And if you continue to read both Articles 31 and 32, they do receive land up off of Randolph Avenue. That's in exchange, that's part of the Article 97 transfer. And that's in the draft legislation that is being considered by EOEEA before it's actually filed with the legislature.
Thanks, that you're a font of information, but it sounds like if it was transferred to you to get a playground built there, the Parks Department would have to somehow give you 4 acres.
Yes.
Or more. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
So Jay, why was that important to you?
It's important to me because I think a lot of people in this room and outside of this room want to see a playground there, and we keep hearing, there's no black and white, there's no absolute yes or absolute no, but it sounds like, it's not just, yes, the land would have to change hands a few more times. It's, if all of this land, including the proposed playground, went into the Conservation Commission, then it's not just then the Conservation Commission transfers it. It's, they have to transfer it, and by law, they have to receive 4 more acres somewhere else either a part of a current park, or it sounds like that might not even suffice. Maybe, I don't know, buy 4 acres on the private market. Again, it sounds like nothing's black and white, but it sounds like it's more than just one more step to getting the playground. It's a significant hurdle, is what it sounds like to me.
That Article 97 transfer would have to get approved as well.
Yes.
I mean,
So
that's what.
All those things have to happen, and then it goes to, legislature and other bodies.
I don't want to speak outside of my realm of expertise, but that's what it sounds like.
We could buy back the Kidder Library. JJ.
I was going to ask Mr. Kiernan a question along those lines, so I'm good.
You're good?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have anything? Does anybody have any motions they'd like to make? Jay.
If it's in order, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we recommend that the town send this to the select board for further study. Again, if I'm going to cause a parliamentary procedure debate that lasts an hour, that's not my intent. I think it's sort of nicer for us to vote yes for what we want and no for what we don't want. But you're the chair.
I mean, this isn't the select board's article. They don't take a petition. They don't take a position on the citizens petition.
Yeah, I mean,
so I think we own it.
Okay. I think, historically, this has been sort of a polite way of saying no. And again, we'd be voting for what we want to see happen rather than against what we don't want to see happen, but I'll defer to you.
Well,
we should just vote no.
Okay.
So we're talking about Jay's motion, right? And there's an opportunity for a second. Is there a second to Jay's motion?
I will withdraw the motion.
It's withdrawn.
His hand is raised.
Judy?
I think the comment I was going to make has been solved. Thank you very much. I do concur with your assessment, Mr. Chair, that a citizen's petition isn't resolved. To my understanding, is not resolved at the select board. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Tom, you had your hand up?
Motion to vote. I'd like to make.
So, please state your motion.
Motion to, would be a motion to, well, it would be a motion to support the citizens petition to transfer to the deed the Pope's Pond land, I believe, correct?
To recommend the town.
You're the best. To see if the town will vote to transfer.
To recommend that the town.
To recommend that the town will vote to transfer the care, custody, management, and control of the Conservation Commission.
As stated, et cetera.
As stated, yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
I don't think there's any confusion. Okay, so Tom has made a motion to recommend to the town the approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Tim has seconded it. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Tom?
Yes.
Lori? Yes. Jay?
No.
Julie Joyce?
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes.
Dream. Come back to him. Tim?
Yes.
Julia?
No.
JJ?
No.
Amanda? Amanda?
No.
Ron?
No.
Judy?
Yes.
And let's see if, is Dream here still? Dream? Is here, but he's not answering.
Or- okay.
Dream, you're on mute? Muted?
You texted.
I haven't gotten them yet.
I'm happy to text you if that's
Do it, okay.
Okay.
Please, thank you.
Saying, are you muted? We are voting VOTING.
Can you call them?
Bathroom. I sure. I'm on speakerphone. Do you need his number? Do you have his number? It's not going through. We don't have signal. Yeah, I just don't have good signal.
I.
What's the vote?
We have 6 yeses and 5 nos. I see an abstention. Or I shouldn't say abstention.
So we had an interesting, informative conversation tonight on a citizen's petition for an article for our special town meeting with regards to the transferring of properties to the Conservation Commission. Such properties commonly be referred to as Pope's Pond. We had, this was subject to Articles 31 and 32 of the annual town meeting last year that were germane to an Article 97 land swap. At that town meeting, the people of the town did vote to transfer into the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission said properties that are subject to the citizens petition. I find that the people of the town, through their vote at town meeting, have transferred this property to the care, custody, and control of the Conservation Commission, that though this has not been effectuated by a legal document such as a deed, that this process is underway. So I would register a no vote with regards to Tom's motion that the town recommend to that the warrant committee recommend to the town approval of the citizens petition, thereby creating a tie. My understanding of the rules on which that we operate on, and if it's a tie, then the motion does not carry. And so under these circumstances, it would be the recommendation of the warrant committee that the town not approve the citizens petition. I think that's all we have on our agenda for tonight. Let's stay tuned with regards to scheduling of our next meetings, okay? Maybe we come back on Monday, but right now we don't have anything that's ready to go. So I think we're talking Wednesday, next week. I think school building committee and probably the everything else. I think we've got 3 that we got to do: a budget one, a school building committee, and that other one. All right. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn? Sorry.
Any